Hello and welcome to this episode 11 of season 2 of A Conversation with Cometan. I'm your host, obviously today, Cometan, and I'm going to be showing you or lecturing to you today the section 5 of the Total Immersion into Astronism lecture that we have been publishing over the last couple of weeks. Today, we're going to be focusing on what we call the cosmology of Astronism, or the Astronist Cosmology. So this is going to be looking at really how Astronism sees kind of the biggest questions, really, the structure of the universe, the nature of the universe, the functions and dynamics of the universe, and how that relates to us as humans, but also, how that relates also to the endeavor of transcension. Okay, so let's begin. And what we really need to begin with first when we're looking at the cosmology of Astronism is what we call the Doctrine of Limitation. So this is not a dogma, so it is not uncontrovertibly true or incontrovertibly true, sorry, but it is held to be true by the Astronist Institution, by Astronism, yet it is interpretable. That's the way that we define what a doctrine is. And of course, this subsection 1, will be focusing on the foundations 1, 2, and 3 of the Astronist Cosmology that we'll be coming to at the end of this section 5 a little bit later on. So let's get into what limitation is. Well, the proper term for the Doctrine of Limitation is Limitationism, which really states in a kind of way that it's kind of an observation, really, of the nature of the cosmos, and that we all share this sort of quality of being limited by our own nature. So, even when you look at, of course, I'm a limited entity. I can only do so much before I get really tired, or I will only grow so much, or I will only understand so much. The Earth is a limited entity. The Earth has only existed for so long, and it will only exist for so long in the future. And the same goes for the sun, the galaxies, and even the whole cosmos itself. So when we look at this observation, really, the Doctrine of Limitation emerges from this sort of observation of the nature of the cosmos, essentially, that everything around us, everything that we see, everything that we are is limited. And this is, and I suppose one thing where another example of showing our really limited nature, our inherent limited nature, is the fact that even though we have the concept of infinity, even though we have the concept of limitlessness, even those concepts are limited by our limited minds, by our limited understandings of what infiniteness really is. We can't imagine what infiniteness really is, because that is so beyond our limited comprehension. So again, even in that just little example there, you can realize and see and observe and understand that yes, the cosmos and everything within it is fundamentally limited. And this has real implications, really, for the Astronist belief system. So in Astronist philosophy, this quality of limitation found throughout cosmic existence is regarded as synonymous with the word cosmic. So when I use the word cosmic in the context of the Astronist belief system, what I'm actually inferring there, what I'm actually implying, is that what I'm referring to is limited by its nature. So anything that is cosmic is limited by its nature. When I use the word universal or universe, I'm actually referring to something beyond this cosmos, beyond this universe, that is unlimited by its nature, that has a different nature to us, that it is infinite, that it is unlimited, that it is limitless. Okay? So this sort of principle that everything within the cosmos and the cosmos itself is limited and possesses a limited nature is what we call the Cosmic Limitation Principle. Some even have labeled this the cosmic limitation problem due to the consequences it causes and the obstacles it creates for some Astronist discourses. So, you know, in some areas of the Astronist cosmology, there are contentions with this idea of the cosmic limitation principle and some other aspects of existence that we may be coming to in this lecture. And also it is kind of a problem in the sense that, you know, we, as our part of our core nature, our inherent innate nature, cannot gain those infinite heights without first doing something, that without first, well, in Astronism, going to transcension or going to astrosis. So again, this can be understood as a kind of problem in a way, in some regards, but mainly we call it the cosmic limitation principle. So limitationism then is the formulation of this quality of material physical existence in the cosmos into coherent belief that anything with a cosmic nature cannot bestow unlimited abilities or qualities. So this, again, is kind of in contention with the ideas of supernaturalism, not entirely, but in part, you know, this idea that an entity within the cosmos can become immortal. That's denied by Astronism, this idea that, you know, you can become immortal within the cosmos. That is not the case. You have to leave this, you would have to leave this cosmos, you would have to leave or transcend from cosmic existence in order to attain any type of immortality, any type of infinite existence in a way. And as a result, anything that exists within the cosmos cannot escape it. So the term that we use for escaping the cosmos or transcending cosmic nature is what we call transcosmization. This is often associated with the concept of ultimation or ultimationism that we spoke about in the few previous lectures, I think, but mainly in the astrosoteriology. And really what this limited nature then says to us as humans is that the question remains, can we alleviate ourselves from this limited nature? Can we transcend to heights that are, you know, beyond our inherent nature? Can we, as a species, as individuals, reach conditions that are beyond what we currently can conceive of or become in this present moment, but in the future, hopefully we can become sort of higher beings that are which may then be able to transcend cosmic existence, we hope. So as a result of the development of the doctrine of limitationism, an Astronist tradition of philosophy emerged that sought to contemplate this concept of limitation to understand the various consequences of the doctrine of limitationism. Limitedness, then, is this nature of the cosmos as restricted in time, size, and abundance, as well as its component parts, its products, which includes humanity, but also includes the galaxies, the stars, the solar systems, the planets. All of these things are limited. But what we say in Astronism is that these products of the cosmos have a hierarchy, and that really humanity at the moment is at the bottom of this hierarchy because we're limited on one limited closed system, which is the Earth, within the limited system of the cosmos, and so on and so forth. What the astronomical world possesses is the capacity for us to expand and sort of get up this hierarchy of existence, essentially, which with at the top has ultimation, and the way we get to that ultimation is through transcension, through going up. So it kind of makes sense in that way, you know, it's quite logical in that sense. But what I'm trying to say here is that humanity isn't just limited in a sense. So it is limited, but it isn't just limited. It's actually ascribed the phrase limitedness is actually the specific phrase for human nature, because we are a limited entity as a species, as individuals, okay, but we also exist within, or are trapped in a way within, the limited entity of the Earth, within the limited entity of the cosmos. So we are sort of this double limited, in a sense, this double limitation. And so Astronism sees sort of the endeavor of transcension as trying to overcome these limitations, as trying to change or shift or alter these limitations so that humanity can reach higher conditions in the future. So you've heard me speak about this process of transcosmization, but the capacity to transcosmize is one that is, well, significantly beyond our current comprehension, our current capacities in a sense, really. The consequences of which even we don't know. We don't know what the consequences of transcosmization will be for human nature. We can only sort of suggest that we would change our nature if we could do that, if we could get to the condition where we can do that. And the condition that we call that is transcosmizability, okay? So this refers to whether or not, or the degree to which, some entity may physically be able to transcend cosmic existence. So we have what we call cosmosis, which is sort of a process of cosmic cessation, essentially. And what sort of transstellationists believe, and what the sort of post-astrosis schools of thought suggest, is that there is a spiritual dimension to this transcosmization, whereas in mainstream astronism, we speak about sort of the more physical aspects of transcosmization. You know, can we physically transcend this cosmic limited existence, essentially? Can we transcend the universe? Can we transcend the cosmos as a species? Can we get to that condition where we have the capacity to do that? And of course, this is what we call transcosmizability or transcosmization. So really, when I was talking about this nature of humanity as being limited, or double limited, what I'm really talking about there is what we call predependence, this condition of being predependent. This is the notion that all that is cosmic and is therefore limited in nature is dependent upon something having existed prior to its own coming into being. So humans, the species, were dependent on, in a very, very simplistic way, prior species of, you know, primates that we evolved from, but also then we were pre-dependent on the Earth existing, and then we were pre-dependent on the solar system, then the Milky Way galaxy, and so on and so forth, in a very, very simplistic way. It's a heck of a lot more pre-dependence than just that for humanity. What this tells us about our nature is that we are entirely dependent by the fact of our inherent, innate being. We are entirely dependent. We are hopelessly, in a way, dependent on the pre-existence of other things, the pre-existence of other entities, and that if those other entities didn't exist or hadn't developed in the way that they did, that we as a humanity would not exist. Okay, what this sort of concept really of predependence is trying to show is really the sort of, not the insignificance of humanity, but the vulnerability of humanity. This idea that, yes, really, if these other things didn't exist, neither would we. We are not an independent, self-sustaining entity, is the essential principle here, which then lends into the reasons why, you know, we are limited, and sort of, it's an aspect of our limited nature, essentially. It's an aspect of the nature of humanity to be entirely dependent upon something else existing prior to us, and so on and so forth, in terms of, you know, future generations or future species, subspecies of humans, you know, they will be dependent upon us. This nature of predependence, though, is very much different from what we would say is infinite nature, or universal or divine nature. Whatever is beyond the cosmos is not dependent, is not predependent on the existence of something else prior to it in order for it to exist, because infiniteness means that it's always existed. So there can't have been anything existing but prior to it. Okay. So where does scope come in with all this? I mean, if you watch the Astrosoteriological lecture, you will have come across this term scope, and I've spoken about this a heck of a lot. Where does all scope come into this? Well, scope really is the key ingredient for us. So I've spoken about how we are sort of hopelessly limited, really, in a way, that humanity, we're trapped upon this planet. We can't really get anywhere at the moment. We can observe a sort of very small proportion of the cosmos. We really don't know how big it is or where it ends or, you know, where the cosmic periphery is. We really know very, very little. And so we're in this very primitive, really, still stage. We don't like to think of ourselves as primitive, but we are still very, very primitive. And I think we need to understand that. We don't like to admit that, I don't think. But what we have, and this is why the astrosoteriology is so important, what we have is scope. What we have is the opportunity of the present moment to change our nature, the opportunity of the present moment to either change our individual nature or to change the nature of humanity, to embark upon the endeavor of transcension, to continue on with the endeavor of transcension. We have the scope to do that. Okay, we have this brilliant confinement that was bestowed to us 40 or so thousand years ago. You were watching, hopefully, the previous lecture on the Astronic tradition. You know, during the scope of man, this confinement was bestowed to us. We have this capacity to understand opportunity and the potential of the present moment. So we have this opportunity really to successfully undergo transcosmization at some stage. And of course, we can use astronality as the other unmerited scope in order to reach the merited scope of stellancy. So we have these tools, we have these mechanisms that we can use to change or alter this condition for us, to alter our situation in a sense, to transcend from our current limited situation here to a higher condition where we can learn more knowledge about the universe, the cosmos, and possibly divine nature, and of course, you know, transcend to higher conditions. Essentially, we have this capacity. And of course, what we also have is the protective care of the cosmos in this sense. So we're preferred species. We have the scope. We have experienced our scope. We are a sapient species. And we have what we call sustenance or cosmic providence. We have the protective care of the cosmos extended to all sapient beings residing within it. This idea that the cosmos really does care for us, that we're here on the earth and that we're kind of cosseted really on the earth here, that we have everything we need for now, but that really part of our nature is to transcend. And if we don't, then our extinction, our devolution will occur. Not by any punishment, but just by the nature of the order of the cosmic system. Okay, whether you like to see that in, you can put a layer on this. Astrotheists do this. So they put a layer, when I'm talking about sustenance, they actually regard this to be divine providence, this idea of the protective care of God or the protective care of the divine, extended to all sapient beings. Okay, but also and really sapient beings, and then should extend their care to sentient beings. Okay, that's how the system works, is that our providence is provided for through either the cosmos itself or perhaps the divine, and we have then the responsibility to protect and care for sentient beings. Okay, we have this idea of sustenance that sort of pervades all of the cosmos, really. Then we have this idea of ultimacy. This is really, really interesting. Ultimacy is the attributed quality of the astronomical world of it existing in the closest knowable essence to that of the divine, which exists beyond the cosmos and is therefore unknowable to anything that exists within the cosmically limited state. So what we're trying to say here is that when we talk about ultimacy, we're talking about the nature of the astronomical world as being closer to whatever is the ultimation, far beyond what we are right now. And that through the astronomical world, through this ultimacy, through this ultimate nature of the astronomical world, we can come to know really how to achieve transcosmization, how to know the divine, how to understand it. And even in this sense of the unknowable divine, of course, is of course based on faith, this idea that we believe in the divine, okay? The divine still remains unknowable though. We still we know nothing really of the divine. We cannot know because the divine is beyond our knowledge, beyond our comprehension. So anyone who really tries to say that they know and understand and can conceive of the divine, I don't think they're really telling the truth, to be honest, because how could you know that? How could you know that when you yourself is so limited? You cannot understand that. So this is, and that's not just me saying that, that is the cosmic limited nature principle that is showing us that we cannot understand that we could not possibly understand what is infinite, that we could not possibly understand what is divine. Sometimes we use the appellation Astra Mater, which is sometimes used to distinguish the astronomical world from the terrestrial world and from human life. And of course, this is the opposite of the term terra firma. So we use the term Astra Mater to refer to the astronomical world in this sense. And then we use the term terra firma to refer to the terrestrial world, just to distinguish those. So we've covered some of the sort of fundamental principles of the Astronist Cosmology. We've looked at limitationism. Now we're going to go into the Astronist Cosmological Orthodoxy, okay? This is where we really explore sort of the fundamental beliefs and dimensions of the Astronist Cosmology that then relate to what we've just spoken about transcension, about the limited nature of humans, the limited nature of the cosmos, and so on. So we've got firstly some Astronist beliefs. Admirationism, okay, is the principle that even those Astronist cosmological systems and beliefs regarded as heterodoxical should be admired and appreciated for their contributions to the broader system of Astronist thought. So what I'm trying to say there is that, of course, yes, there exists Astronist orthodoxy and there exists Astronist heterodoxy. But in Astronism, we don't take a sort of dismissive role for Astronist heterodoxy, like in perhaps other religions. But what we do is we try to appreciate and admire those other types of views and beliefs for what they are as contributions to the broader Astronist system, that really understanding what we are not and what we don't believe is actually integral to understanding what we do believe. So in actual fact, the heterodoxies of Astronism are actually very, very crucial to understanding what the orthodoxies are. And they play a very crucial role in sort of the fundamental structures of the Astronist belief system. If we don't know what we are not, we cannot know what we are. So again, this is why we have this principle of admirationism. We then have what we call the Cosmic Periphery, which asserts that a fundamental property of the cosmos, due to its limited nature, is, and every other existent cosmos for that matter, is that they possess a definitive edge, either observable or physical, beyond which universal existence resides. So this concept of the cosmic periphery, of course, is studied in mainstream physical cosmology. There is sort of this contention at the moment with regards to the idea that, I mean, some majority of cosmologists have said that the universe, doesn't have a defined edge, doesn't have an edge. It is endless. And I can't agree with that. I cannot agree with that. I know these people are, cosmologists, and they're great people, and they are extremely intelligent, of course, but I cannot agree with that. I cannot agree that the cosmos in which we reside is unlimited, because that would change our nature. We would then be unlimited by our nature. We would be living in an existence that is unlimited. And to me, unless we are an unlimited nature, but we just don't know that we are yet, or that we just can't get to that yet. But to me, even the galaxies and the even the universe itself, I mean, the cosmos itself, if you look at the cosmos had a beginning. We know that by the Big Bang. So even by that fact alone, there could be what we call linear infiniteness. So this idea that, yes, the cosmos had a beginning, but from that beginning, going forward, the cosmos is then infinite. So from that point forward, it's kind of a form of infiniteness, but it kind of like a sub-infiniteness in a way. It's not actual infiniteness. It's what we call linear infiniteness. I just can't get behind this idea that there is not an edge to the cosmos in some way. Maybe, I think a lot of the issue here is that our definitions maybe are not the same, or that don't correspond, or again, we can't create definitions yet. We don't have the capacity yet to create definitions that are, sufficient enough to deal with these mind-boggling, time scales and size scales. It's something that I want to do an actual lecture on. It really is something I want to do a lecture on, this idea of the cosmic periphery. The fundamental principle here is that there exists some edge to the cosmos, some end to the cosmos, because of the limited nature of the cosmos. So for someone to say that the universe, that the outer space is unlimited, to me is wrong. To me, I may be proven wrong in the future, but I just don't see that right now. I just don't see it. I think that we are all limited by our nature. I think to say that the universe, to say that the cosmos, is limited, is unlimited, it's defying really our fundamental nature. It's defying the nature of reality. It's defying the nature of limited existence. And I just can't get behind that right now. And I don't think really the cosmologists know for certain what that is yet. I don't think they know. I think they're just sort of course, using the theories that they have and trying to observe. We don't know. We can't observe. All we can do is look at, and this is all Astronism is doing, this is all I'm doing. I'm just looking at the nature of reality, both here on the terrestrial world, but also in the astronomical world, and everything is limited. There is nothing that is infinite in the universe, in the cosmos. There is nothing. Even the largest black hole has a beginning and an end. Even whatever, even the largest entity in the cosmos, whatever that is, the cosmos itself is limited. So I can't get over that issue of the cosmic periphery. Something to decide in the future, something to discuss and continue to talk about in the future. And we need to have these discussions. So this idea of the cosmic periphery, as we go on, as science continues, as Astronist belief system develops, that will likely change, that will likely alter, that will likely become more clear, hopefully, as time goes on. And of course, this is why we want transcension to happen. We want transcension to happen so then we can gain more knowledge, so then we can understand the cosmic periphery more, so then we can understand if it really does exist. And if it doesn't, then we really need to rethink the whole reality. We really need to think, well, what does that mean for us then, if that doesn't exist? So again, these are all brilliant conversations that are going to take place. And really what I want to happen is for these conversations to take place as part of and within Astronist discourse, Astronist philosophical discourse. This is the whole point. The whole point of me talking to you today is not to just spout all of these beliefs and ideas and then you accept them all. The point is that there is a conversation that takes place. The point is that we begin to think, and then you guys can come back to me and contribute to the Astronist system to help it grow, to help it become more helpful, really, to become more helpful to understanding reality. This is the whole point. Okay, I'm not going to stress that again, but it's just, that's the point of today and every other lecture that I've ever given and every other lecture that I will give. So let's move on to this concept of the isolated evolution. So this is the idea that each of the cosmoses in the universe have evolved uniquely. So if, for example, we were able to achieve transcosmization, and then we were able to go into another cosmos and change our nature again and become limited again and come into another cosmos different from our own, we would see that that cosmos had developed entirely differently, entirely uniquely from our own, okay? Maybe the makeup of matter and reality is different in that cosmos to our own. This is what I'm talking about. These fundamental building blocks may be different in those other universes, in those other cosmoses, sorry. They may be similar. They may have just developed differently on individual planets, or they may be absolutely different. They may be absolutely different. What I can say is that just by a logical notion that because we are limited here and because we are isolated in our evolution, that every other cosmos in the universe has also had that unique evolution, that isolated evolution. We then have what we call triadism, which upholds that the nature of the universe is predicated upon three essential notions, essentially forming the triadic formulation of Astronist beliefs about the universe. So what we have here are three attributes, really, of the nature of the universe, and sort of this idea of what may the divine also connect to the universe in that way. So we've got uncreatedness, we've got divine sustainment, and then we've got omni creativity. So what I mean by those is we'll begin with uncreatedness. So in the Astronist Cosmology, which hopefully we're coming to in a moment, just to explain this, is that we, of course, live in a limited cosmos, but when we transcend this cosmos, when we go beyond that, when we change our nature to become infinite, when we change our limited nature, of course, the only logical answer is to say that we would enter an environment, a state of being that is infinite. This is what we call the universe in Astronist Cosmology, okay? And because of the infinite nature of the universe, because of its unlimited, limitless, infinite nature, we describe it as being uncreated or possessing the characteristic of uncreatedness, okay? This idea that the universe was not created, it was always existed because it is infinite. But that, then we come to the second one here, divine sustainment, that the universe is sustained by the divine, but that the universe is sustained by something, that the divine didn't necessarily create the universe, but the divine sustains it, it keeps it going. So the divine too, if they are separate entities, sometimes they're included as one entity, if the universe is considered as self-sustaining, because especially in sort of atheistic forms of astronism, they sort of deny the sort of separate existence of the divine. They still talk about the divine, but they will deny the separate existence of it. or they may but they won't deny generally the divine sustainment principle, this idea that the divine sustains the universe. Not that it created it, but that it keeps it going, and that the divine also is infinite, and so the divine also has always existed. And then we have what we call Omni Creativity, which is the capacity of the universe, because it is infinite, for the divine to create individual or sort of an unlimited amount of limited cosmoses in the universe, going on forever, of course, because the universe itself is infinite. So here what we're talking about is the interactions really between the different cosmoses, the infinite amount of cosmoses in the universe itself as an infinite realm of existence, and then also the divine itself and its sustaining role in this uncreated universe, okay, in this infinite, uncreated universe, okay? So really getting into the Astronist cosmology here. We have also what we call infinite continuation, which is the principle that infiniteness is fundamentally non-cosmical, which is why no cosmic limited entity can experience infiniteness. I think I spoke about this a little bit earlier on, you know, this idea that even if you look at the largest galaxies and the greatest of structures in the universe, the filaments of the cosmos, these massive, incomprehensibly large, structures, even they are limited. Even they have, you know, they haven't got an infinite nature. So this is what infinite continuation is talking about. It's talking about this idea that infiniteness is fundamentally non-cosmic, non-cosmical, okay? That it is universal or divine, okay? We also have what we call the Doctrine of Cosmos, which is the assertion that the limited nature of physical reality is caused by the fact that we reside within a cosmos, a bounded yet well-ordered existence whose natural laws allow for the materialization of matter. So when we talk about the universe, we're not talking about a place necessarily that possesses matter, because of course, if a realm and everything within it is infinite, then whatever is existing in there is not made of matter, because matter is fundamentally limited. So therefore, anything that exists in the universe, this is why we talk about changing the nature of humanity. When we talk about transcosmization, we're talking about changing our fundamental reality. I won't look like this. We won't look like this when we go to the transcosmization. I won't look like this when we are transcending the cosmic periphery. I'm not going to look like this, especially not when I'm in the universe, because I am a limited entity right now. What that will look like, I'm not sure, because I'm still only limited myself. I've got one brain. You know, I've got you this far, just keep going. You know, I can't sort of do everything, but I will continue to try and understand what that could mean. Do we go into a sort of more spiritual existence? Possibly that's what it means to be a spiritual existence. I don't know. Will it still be physical? Perhaps. We need to think about this more. We need to consider this more. But of course, at the moment, it's so beyond me at this stage. We begin to go into realms that even I can't understand, that even, you know, this idea that I won't look like this, that I won't look like myself if I was to transcosmize, is difficult to accept, is difficult to understand. But what we do know is that we exist within a cosmos. And a cosmos, as I've just said there, is a well-ordered existence whose natures allow for the materialization of matter. So matter does not exist beyond the cosmos, or in matter does not exist in the universe, essentially. That only within the cosmos does matter exist, because matter is fundamentally limited by its nature. Okay, and this is what allows us to obviously materialize as human beings. This fundamental limited matter Okay, so we're talking really here about the difference between a cosmos and the universe. Okay, this idea that a cosmos allows for the materialization of matter and that the universe does not. Okay, because the universe is infinite, and to allow for the materialization of matter means that wherever that matter is materializing must have to be limited. Okay, that's what we're talking about here when we're speaking about the doctrine of cosmos. So we've spoken about just some sort of orthodoxical beliefs and theories within the Astronist cosmology. Let's now move on to what we call the heterodoxy, or the Astronist cosmological heterodoxy. As I said before, these are really important in a way for understanding what we are not. And these help us to understand what we are in many ways. Okay, so the first one is cosmic immortality, which is the assertion that an entity existing in the cosmos could hold the capacity to live forever still within the cosmos, or could otherwise possess an infinite nature. So obviously this is contrasted with what we've just been speaking about, which is limitationism, or the doctrine of limitation. Really what cosmic immortality suggests is that we could gain an infinite nature while still existing within the cosmos. That is fundamentally rejected by not only limitation doctrine, but by the physical reality of the cosmos itself. Okay, that's where limitationism comes from, is the observation of the physical reality. So again, cosmic immortality is denied. So any person who says, well, I can get you to immortality, and even some of the transhumanists, I'm a little bit thingy with when they talk about, immortal beings and they're still within the cosmos. I don't agree with that. I think if that's having to take place, it's going to have to take place outside the cosmos, to me, because of the limited nature of the reality of the cosmos. We also have Apeironism, or Apeironism, sometimes I can't pronounce things right, which is the notion that the cosmos is infinite and therefore possesses an unlimited nature. So this is essentially what we were talking about a little bit before when we were talking about the cosmic periphery, and how some cosmologists have suggested that the cosmos does not have a definitive edge and therefore possibly could be infinite. This is what they're talking about here. Of course, at the moment, this is still regarded as heterodoxy by the Astronist Institution, and of course by Astronism itself, the Astronist belief system. This is considered heterodoxy. That doesn't mean in the future that it will not turn into orthodoxy. Stranger things have happened, but at the moment we maintain this idea that certainly the cosmos is limited by its nature, and that that anything that exists within the cosmos must be limited, and that the cosmos itself possesses a definitive beginning and a definitive end. Okay. Moving on now to some more heterodoxical beliefs, we have what we call Divergism, which states that all that has come into existence has come from a unique or heterogeneous origination rather than from the same point of origination, the bestowal of ontological uniquity to each distinct entity of the cosmos. So this is a really interesting idea. I just don't know about its practical applicability in the physical reality, really, or even really within the Astronist belief system. What he's essentially trying to say is that every single physical existence, especially, individual human beings and animate beings, have all come from, and even just non-animate objects like this curtain, for example, that everything has come from a unique origination. It's kind of a sort of application of what we were speaking about in the philosophy lecture of Astronism, where we were speaking about uniquitarianism, the ontology of Astronism, the idea that everything is unique, that each human being has an individual ontology or unique ontology. This is kind of applying that principle to every single entity, even this water bottle in the cosmos, even water inside the water bottle has a unique origination point rather than the same origination point. So it kind of denies really the Big Bang, essentially. It denies the idea that, you know, that really everything from within the cosmos exists from a sort of limited single origination point, which then goes into ideas about, well, does that mean then that the cosmos is infinite? And that's why Divergism is heterodoxical. We've now come on to what we call real supernaturalism or cosmic supernaturalism. So when I was speaking before about sort of the denial of supernaturalism in some parts of the Astronist belief system, what I was talking about there is the denial really specifically of cosmic supernaturalism. I wasn't saying there that, you know, the divine doesn't exist beyond the cosmos, because I, of course, believe that that is true, that the divine does exist beyond the cosmos, that there is something that is sustaining existence. But what I'm saying here that is a heterodoxical assertion is that that real supernaturalism, and which states that all notions of supernatural entities in the cosmos, such as angels, gods, or demons, may also be regarded the cosmos itself as a supernatural entity. So you know, the idea that, you know, angels exist and come down to earth and that they have sort of unlimited natures because of the connections to divinity, denied in Astronism, I'm afraid. Things like demons, gods existing within the cosmos. Of course, we have this idea, and we're going to come to this when we speak about Astronist theology. We do have this idea of intervenience. We certainly have that idea, and that is certainly a growing sort of idea within Astronism. But we sort of deny really the existence of infinite, unlimited entities existing in the cosmos, unlimited beings existing in the cosmos. Okay, when we speak about divine intervenience, we're not really talking about a specific entity coming into the cosmos that is unlimited. Okay, we're talking about the divine. When we speak about intervenience, and I'll get into this a little bit later, but just quickly now, when I'm talking about divine intervenience, I'm talking about the capacity of the divine to lower its nature as an infinite being, as an infinite entity, whatever it is, as an infinite force, if you will, lowering its nature, altering its own nature so then it can come into the cosmos, because otherwise it wouldn't be able to do that. It wouldn't be able to, if it didn't sort of, it wouldn't be able to exist within the cosmos that it created if it just came into the cosmos. We won't be able to comprehend what that was. It is interesting conversations, but it's essentially what I'm trying to say here is that even the divine would have to change its nature in order to engage with the intervenience, in order to intervene really in the cosmos. And what we see that as in some ways is the Astron force or Astronic energy, which is part of the translationist school of thought and is very interesting. I'm going to get to that a little bit later on in prismatics. But essentially, yeah, what I'm trying to say here is that the divine has to change its nature if it wants to come into the cosmos, and that's something that is because of the cosmic limited nature, the limited nature of the cosmos is the reason why that anything that exists as an infinite entity within the cosmos cannot occur, that cannot exist. That anything that is infinite or unlimited or even divine in nature cannot exist within the cosmos. That is completely denied in Astronism because of the cosmic limitation principle. Can you see now why this is sometimes referred to as the cosmic limitation problem? Because it does bring up a lot of issues with a lot of other religions, but also even some ideas within Astronism. there is contention here. So this is why it's sometimes referred to as the cosmic limitation problem. But the reason why is because we can observe this. This is not something that has just been plucked out of thin air. This cosmic limitation principle is an observable fact of reality. And so when I'm talking about the divine cannot come into the universe because it's not limited, you may think, well, that's a little bit contradictory. If the divine is unlimited, then it should be able to do that. And it can do that. That's what intervenience is. That's why it does that, because it can do that. We cannot do that. If we could do that right now, I wouldn't need to talk about transcension. I wouldn't need to talk about us gaining sort of higher conditions, because we'd already be able to do it. The whole point of the divine as existing above us and as existing in a higher infinite state is that it has the capacity to transcosmize, that it has the capacity to sort of engage in intervenience. This is the whole point that I'm trying to talk about here. But essentially, yeah, the cosmic limitation principle is observable, but it also causes some issues, some contentions, but that's really good. This is what the whole Astronist belief system is all about. I love these contentions and trying to figure them out. That's the whole point, you know? So let's move on to, I think this may be the final heterodoxical belief here, which is what we call sidereal nihilism. Okay, or cosmo-nihilism, which is the denial of the real existence of the cosmos as connected to humanity, despite humanity existing entirely within it and dependent upon it, just as an insignificantly small portion of the cosmos. So what sidereal nihilism really rejects is this idea of sideriancy, this idea that the cosmos has, you know, a relationship with humanity, that we actually have a relationship with the astronomical world. That's what sidereal nihilism is actually rejecting. It's rejecting this idea in some extreme forms, really, of astronality. And it's rejecting fundamentally, though, this idea of sideriancy, this idea that we can have a connection to the astronomical world as human beings because of our sapience and scope. Of course, this is why this is heterodoxical, because in Astronism, the Sideriancy is everything. Our connection to the astronomical world is everything to us in Astronism. And of course, again, the Sideriancy can come across a little bit sometimes as a little bit airy-fairy, a little bit wishy-washy, you know, connection to the astronomical world. What does that mean? But if you bring it really down to some of the more physical aspects of the Sideriancy, of course we have a relationship with the astronomical world. We come from the astronomical world. We live within the astronomical world. You know, the stars are part of our makeup. You know, we wouldn't exist if the stars didn't exist. So of course we have this sort of fundamental limited connection to the astronomical world. Of course we have that. Of course we have this relationship. Of course we have this connection and bond with the astronomical world. And of course we can engage in that. This is what we're talking about with the Sideriancy. Of course, this is what sidereal nihilism is rejecting. This is why that's an heterodoxical belief so far. So we've looked at Astronist Orthodoxy and Astronist Heterodoxy when it comes to the cosmology. Let's now move into subsection 2 of this section 5 of the Total Immersion into Astronism and take a look at the different types of existence. Also, just to remind you as well that we've covered foundations 1, 2, and 3 in that previous subsection. We're now moving into foundations 4 and 5. So here is an overview of the different types of existences. You will now be familiar with some of these terms. We've got the cosmos, which is the expanding physical universe in which humans reside, regarded as a limited, animate wholeness, untranscendable for all that resides within it, penetrable for that which resides outside of it. A cosmos is a limited material existence. When I was speaking just a little bit earlier on about the intervenience of the divine, this is what I'm talking about when I'm speaking about penetrability. The penetrability of the cosmos means that anything outside of it can intercede, can intervene into it because of the infinite nature of whatever exists outside of it, as long as that infinite entity can reduce its nature down to a limited capacity, a limited reality that we are here, a material limited reality, okay? We then have the universe. Also, another thing, just 1 second. What I was just speaking about before about the limited nature, this cosmic limitation problem in many ways, also has contentions for the concept of the soul. A little bit later on, I think prismatics, but maybe a little bit in eschatology. I'll be speaking a little bit about the mortality of the soul in Astronism. So, of course, this really does diverge from majority of other religions which regard the soul to be infinite, to be immortal. That's a little bit what I was talking about before when we were talking about this idea of Astronism's rejection of cosmic immortality. I was also referring to the immortality of the soul in this regard. So actually in Astronism, mainly in Transtellationism, the soul is actually regarded to be mortal, as a mortal aspect of the human being rather than an immortal aspect, because of course anything that exists within the cosmos cannot be immortal, so cannot be infinite. So that's a real big difference of Astronism from other religions and belief systems, again, due to the cosmic limitation principle, only due to the observability of that. That's all it's based on. It's not based on my beliefs particularly. It is literally just based on the observable, limited nature of existence, and the consequences of that means that the soul within us, of course, Transtellationists believe in the soul, astronaturalists tend not to. The Translationists would say that because of the cosmic limitation principle, that the soul is actually mortal, and that part of the endeavor of astrosis and cosmosis is actually the immortalization of the soul, that's what those processes represent, essentially. So sorry for that sort of tangent, going on a tangent there, but I just wanted to speak about that for a second. Let's continue. So the universe then is the unlimited existence beyond the periphery of the cosmos, regarded as populated by an infinite amount of cosmoses. So we should be able to now distinguish between our terms, the cosmos and the universe. Of course, these terms are not used in this way in mainstream physical cosmology, so that is something you need to be aware of. You know, when we talk about the universe in Astronism, we're not talking about this physical reality here. We're talking about a transcendent, unlimited reality, non-material, immaterial existence beyond the periphery of the cosmos. We're not talking about material limited reality here. That's what we refer to the cosmos as, okay? And then, of course, we have the divine, which is the ultimacy or your source of existence, regarded as pervading throughout each of the infinite number of cosmoses. So again, this is invoking our belief in panentheism, this idea of the interpenetrability or interpenetrative nature of the divine, the fact that it interpenetrates different cosmoses in the universe, and that it created those cosmoses, that it sustains them, and it is able to intervene in those cosmoses by lowering its nature and then emerging as what we call the astron, or the astron force, essentially. We then have the three lesser existences. Just to go back a second, they were the three higher existences, or I think three higher existences, I think we refer to those. These three existences are what we call the three lesser existences. So these are sort of one sort of level down from those main three existences. We have what we call the betwixity, funny name, but this is what we refer to it as, which is the space between all things in cosmic existence, both terrestrial and astronomical. So the space between me and the camera is betwixity. Okay, anything that is space, my hands are moving through space right now. Of course, when we get up to outer space, the spaces between things are astronomical in scale, of course. So there are different levels of betwixity here, but that's what we're referring to, essentially referring to the space of physical reality between different objects, okay? Then what we have is really interesting here. So just before I talk about the chaos, I need to just go back to the cosmos and speak about the nature of the cosmos as ordered, fundamentally ordered, that the nature of reality, just as we've observed that the cosmos is limited, we can also observe that the cosmos is ordered, that things have a particular course in the cosmos, that things have a particular way of being in the cosmos, that things have a particular function and order in the system of the cosmos. This is what we call the wholeness of the cosmos. This is sometimes why we refer to the cosmos as animate or alive or organic or wholeness, okay? What is contrasted from that is what we call the chaos, which represents all disorder, all destruction in the cosmos, all sort of instances of disorder or destruction of harmony, really, in the cosmos, dysfunction. So an example of the chaos would be a comet strike on the Earth would be an example of the chaos, the destruction of that system, the destruction of a galaxy, the end of, I mean, even the black holes, for example, when they have this sort of destructive power, to destroy stars and things like this. This is what we call the chaos, and the chaos exists and pervades the cosmos. The chaos is also primarily unknown. We don't know whether the chaos, we can kind of guess that the chaos exists in every other cosmos, but we don't know to what degree the chaos has an influence on the nature of the cosmos. Things like black holes, anything that is unknown also, things like black holes then are classified in astronomism as the chaos. Sometimes we refer to the cosmic periphery as part of the chaos because, again, it is unknown. It is unknown still. Just as the black holes are kind of unknown entities still. Of course, we rely on science and observation and empirical understandings to reduce what we understand as part of the chaos. But as time goes on, more things will be added to the chaos because the more we know means the more, in a way, that we don't know. So that's the nature of knowledge, I suppose. But the chaos here is anything that is disorder or destruction in the cosmos. Then we have what we call the mitra. The mitra is a person's individual, unique, and consequential relationship with the cosmos. Sideriancy as conceived in a cosmological form. So, of course, sideriancy is the relationship of the human species with the cosmos, or any other scoped species for that matter, any other sapient species. And what we refer to the mitra as a kind of form of this sideriancy, but that has sort of cosmological sort of effect, really. So really the mitra refers to all of the sideriancies, really, of all the species in the cosmos, combined, really. That's what the mitra refers to. Sometimes the mitra may also refer to a person's individual relationship with the cosmos, but what I'm really trying to say, and distinct from the mitra from the sideriancy terms, is that the mitra is very much more used in cosmological contexts, Astronist cosmological contexts, whereas the sideriancy as a term is much more astro-soteriological, much more soteriological in its uses. So again, here is an example of how two terms refer to very similar concepts, but they may be used in different discourses. So as I've said, the mitra as a term is used in Astronist cosmological discourses mainly, and then the term sideriancy is mainly used in astro-soteriological discourses. Finally, here we have the three subservient existences, which is what we refer to as the metagalaxy, the metacosmia, and the omniverse. Going back to the metagalaxy for a second, we have this as the superstructure of the cosmos regarded in totality, especially superclusters and galaxy filaments. So these are the biggest structures of the cosmos, the superstructures, and this is when they're regarded in totality. So this is really the cosmos understood at its sort of most extreme structural formations, really. This is what we call the metagalaxy. And again, getting through the metagalaxy and transcending the metagalaxy is a really important part of the transcosmization process and is really important part of the transcension process altogether. We then have what we call the metacosmia, which is actually the periphery of the cosmos, accelerating in its expansion into the infinite universe. So again, we've referred to this all the time as cosmic periphery, but the actual proper term for the cosmic periphery or the periphery of the cosmos is metacosmia, okay? Then we have what we call the omniverse, which is the infinite amount of cosmoses residing in the universe regarded collectively. So as I've said before, the divine has created an infinite amount of cosmoses because of the infinite realm of the universe in which these cosmoses, which are themselves limited, are able to reside. And the omniverse is the term that we use to refer to these cosmoses in collectivity, okay? So the omniverse is distinct here from the universe in this regard. We also have these two important terms that I've used already, I think, in some of my lectures, which are progeny and phenomena, or astronomical progeny and astronomical phenomena. I use these terms really to refer to, firstly, progeny, the physical entities and structures in the cosmos, and then I use the term phenomena to refer to events taking place in the cosmos. So, of course, a comet is a physical entity in the cosmos, so it is a progeny, but the fact or event of a cosmos crashing into the Earth or a cosmos passing the Earth by is a phenomena, okay? And that's an observable phenomena of a progeny. So the progeny itself, the physical entity, is what we refer to as the progeny. And then the phenomena is an event that involves that progeny, is an observable, often observable event that involves that progeny. But also it could mean a supernova. That is a phenomena of the cosmos. It is involving a progeny, but it is an event that is taking place in the cosmos. Okay, so that's just the distinction between those two terms that I use quite often. Sorry for all the terms, but I have to get through them all. Another one is interlacation, which relates to the connection, relationship, and interactions between different entities that are members of the cosmology of Astronism. So I've spoken about the divine, the universe, the metacosmia, the chaos, the cosmos, all these different members. We call them members of the Astronist Cosmology. When we refer to the process of interlacation, this is really referring to any sort of connection or interaction between these different members of the Astronist cosmology. And of course, you know, these different members have different relationships to each other. Some are closer than others. Some have more an effect on others than others do. And all those interactions are collectively referred to as interlacation. We also have what we call degrees of cosmicity, okay? So cosmicity refers to the degree of something being cosmic or the degree of something being limited or the nature of that as being either limited or cosmic or not. So we have a few important terms here. We have acosmic, so a term called acosmic, which relates to anything that is not cosmic in nature, is unlimited. So acosmic as a term can be related to the divine and the universe, certainly. Sometimes it is actually referred or approached to the chaos, in the sense that the chaos, yes, is sort of related to the cosmos, it exists within the cosmos, but at the same time, it also may not have a limited nature. We're not really sure what the chaos represents, or really what the nature of the chaos is. And so that's reason why sometimes the word acosmic is also applied to the chaos as well. We have also the word cosmic, which of course I use all the time, or adivinical, which is existing with a limited nature, which I've spoken about a heck of a lot of times. And then we've got extra cosmic as a term, existing outside a cosmos, so therefore either universal or divine. And then we have the term intracosmic, which is existing within a cosmos. So me and you are intracosmic. Oh, sorry, within a cosmos. Yes. So that's me and you, or that's the galaxies, the Earth. We exist within a cosmos. I've not included on there, it may be a bit later, the term intercosmic, which is kind of relating to the universe really, but it relates to existence between cosmoses. So that is infinite existence between cosmoses. That's what we refer to as intercosmic rather than intracosmic. That's what I've got mixed up with there then. Oh, here we go, intercosmic. So I've always thinking ahead of what the next thing is. Intercosmic, so I've just explained what that is. Then we have pre-cosmic, subcosmic, and transcosmic. So pre-cosmic, of course, is a time before the creation and existence of the cosmos. Specifically, I'm referring here to the cosmos in which we reside, but the pre-cosmic term can be referred to any cosmos within the universe, okay? And then we have what we call subcosmic, which is below astronomical levels. So anything that is terrestrial or human, or even human perception is sometimes referred to as subcosmic. Another term also is subastral as well. And then we have what we call transcosmic. This relates to transcosmization, you know, the ability to exist inside as well as outside a cosmos, and the ability to intervene in different cosmoses. This type of ability or existence is namely attached to the divine, the nature of the divine as an infinite entity that can intervene into different cosmoses whilst also retaining its infinite nature. Of course, in order to intervene, it must lower its nature for a time in order to then intervene, whilst also retaining part of its infinite nature. In Astronism, we have what we call the 9 cosmical elements. These are quite interesting. You know, they're not central to the Astronist cosmology, but they are interesting. Of course, we have the traditional earth, fire, water, air, but in the Astronist cosmology, we also include 5 more, which are lightness, darkness, cosmos, chaos, and divine. So these form the sort of cosmical elements within Astronism. And of course, these are referred to throughout Astronist discourses, so they are important to some degree. So there are different types of conceptions, really, of these different members of the Astronist cosmology. Of course, first we have cosmicality, which is a particular conception or view of the cosmos. Of course, these members of the Astronist cosmology are significant entities. They have a lot of interpretive breadth. And of course, you know, even definitely the entities of the universe and the divine have different conceptions. Of course, the divine, we have many different conceptions. We call these divinologies or divinalities. We have atheistic divinalities even. We have panentheistic divinologies. We have pantheistic divinologies, theistic divinologies, monotheistic divinologies. All these different approaches and conceptions are what make the Astronist cosmology and Astronist understandings of these different entities real, and in a way, not just real, but sort of true, in the sense that to have all these different conceptions and views of these entities is what makes them what they are, is what makes the Astronist system unique, really, in that it has the capacity to sort of encompass all of these different types of conceptions of these members of its cosmology. So sometimes the words apexity, deuterity, and triterity are used to denote the positions of the divine, the universe, and the cosmos, respectively, especially when we're talking about them in terms of a hierarchy of capacities and natures. So, of course, the reason why the cosmos is often considered at the bottom is because it is a limited entity, fundamentally, and that the reason why, of course, the divine is at the top is because the divine is a infinite entity. Okay, so sometimes those types of words can be used for referring to or distinguishing from the different natures or conditions of these members of the Astronist cosmology. So what we now need to really do is introduce what we call the Astronic Paradigm. Like any system of cosmology, there exists a paradigm into which concepts and beliefs must fit. For the cosmology of Astronism, this is called the Astronic Paradigm. So the Astronic Paradigm holds that cosmic existence is divided into cosmicity and chaosity, with the former denoting order, knowingness, finiteness, and a limited nature, while the latter, as we've already spoken about, denotes any instance of disorder, unknownness, infiniteness, and an unlimited nature. These two forms of existence are manifest in the cosmos and all of the cosmoses, and the chaos in the cosmology of Astronism. So again, this paradigm is what we understand in terms of that there either exists order, knowingness, finiteness and limitedness, or there exists disorder, unknownness, infiniteness, or unlimitedness. Okay, so there's those two sort of paradigms here, those two dichotomies, really, that dichotomy between these two conditions, really, these two situations for reality, in a sense. So now we'll move on to really the nature of the universe. So this is where we're talking about this entity, this infinite entity, this infinite, actually probably the right word is realm, really. It's not really an entity, it's more of a realm beyond the cosmos. So we know, thanks to the work of cosmologists, that the cosmos is not only expanding, but that it is accelerating in its expansion. This means that not only is the cosmic periphery expanding, but that the space between entities in the cosmos is expanding also. And as a result, what is observable to humanity in the cosmos is retracting. Whether it is referred to as the cosmos in Astronism corresponds to whether what is referred to as the cosmos in Astronism corresponds to the observable universe in mainstream cosmological discourse, and what is referred to as the universe in Astronism corresponds to the unobservable universe in mainstream discourse remains in dispute. So this is what I was talking about a little bit earlier on when I was speaking about sort of this contention with, does the cosmic periphery actually exist? Does there exist a limited sort of nature to the cosmos? Of course, in present Astronist orthodoxy, that is affirmed. But of course, cosmology, physical cosmology right now continues to have sort of disputes over what the nature and shape and size of the universe, or we obviously refer to it the cosmos, what that actually is. I think as time goes on, the terms that we use within Astronism to refer to these two distinct entities, these two distinct realms, will become more clear. And of course, the cosmos here is obviously what we refer to as the observable universe. Whether that corresponds to the unobservable universe, or whether we're talking about something even beyond the unobservable universe, I think will become clearer as time goes on and as we know more, learn more about the distinctions between these two entities. But again, what we always have to understand is that there is this limited nature to the cosmos. So whenever we move into an entity that is infinite or has an infinite nature to it, or where infinite entities are able to exist in a non-material matter, in non-material form, then that's when we're moving into the universal nature. And that's where we're moving into a different type of realm to what we exist in here and now, of course, in the cosmos. So that's a good way of sort of distinguishing between those two things. When the cosmologists are talking about the cosmos or the universe as infinite, well, there must be a point where that infiniteness becomes real, in terms of becomes material, in the sense of becomes, well, not become material, but becomes knowable, becomes observable. If that is not the case, then we're still in the cosmos, but we just don't know how big the cosmos actually is. And this is the paradigm, really, or the paradox, really, between what is perceivable about the nature and size of the cosmos, and then what is sort of empirical about it. Okay, so what is actually the reality of it as well. However, although some have used semantics to disregard the concept of an expanding periphery of the cosmos, it still remains only logical that if the cosmos is expanding, then it must be expanding into something. It is this something in Astronism that we call the universe. So whether that is more cosmos, which is how some cosmologists have sort of theorized it, or, you know, defined it, or used terms to define it, obviously they refer to it as just part of this cosmos, whereas in Astronism we would call it the universe because it has a different nature to how we exist here in a limited capacity. So again, we really need to distinguish between these two terms, and that, you know, it is a little bit disingenuous for some of these cosmologists to kind of use the semantics, really, in a way that is just a bit misleading, to say that, you know, the infiniteness of the cosmos, or the infiniteness nature of the universe, is just the same as the cosmos. Well, no, that's not the case. I think they are two distinct entities. I think there's realms within realms here that are distinct from one another. And I think that the cosmic periphery is that distinction, is that sort of boundary that we're talking about. Fundamentally then, Astronism regards the cosmos as finite. We've made this clear. And the universe as infinite. The fact of the cosmos as having had a beginning, and that is it regarded to have some sort of end, is given us proof, just one smidgen of proof of this limited nature. And again, all you need to do is just look around you here to see that the cosmos is fundamentally limited by its nature, and so therefore, you know, has everything within it a limited nature also, and that is then distinct from whatever exists outside of it, which has then a infinite or unlimited nature. Also important to understand about the Astronist cosmology is that the cosmos, and all other cosmoses by extension, and the universe are seen as ontologically separate entities. Again, I'm trying to just reaffirm this idea that the cosmos and the universe are ontologically separate. They are separate by the nature of their being, the different natures, sorry, of their being. Essentially, that they are not the same thing, but are physically separate and existentially so as well. The latter of which refers to the differences in nature, while the cosmos comprising finiteness and the universe comprising infiniteness. Again, just trying to drive home this idea that the cosmos is distinct from the universe as entities here, as realms, okay? Because of the nature of the beings that exist within them and the sort of fundamental natures themselves. So the universe here is the reason why the universe is the reason why the universe, is regarded as ontologically separate from all cosmoses is because cosmoses are limited. They wouldn't be able to interact with anything that was unlimited. Okay, this is why the concept of the cosmic periphery is so important, or metacosmia, is because that is when the change of nature occurs. Yes, the cosmos is expanding into the universe, so you could understand it as the parts of the universe, even though it's infinite anyway, are becoming cosmic. That's a really interesting way of looking at it that I've not actually thought of before, is this idea of, if these cosmoses are expanding into the universe, like, you know, going like that, into the universe up here, more universe is becoming cosmic. So the metacosmia, this cosmic periphery, is sort of the point at which cosmic reality becomes universal reality, or vice versa, depending on whether you're going out of it or whether you're coming into it. The reason why the universe is regarded as ontologically separate from all cosmoses is because cosmoses are limited, as I've just said. So therefore, they can't interact with anything that is unlimited. So therefore, the periphery here is the metacosmia that is part of the change of nature. This is how the universe, beyond the cosmos, changes into the cosmic limited reality. And of course, again, this is part of the role of the divine in its intervenience, is its capacity to or the way to transverse, we call it transversion, to transverse the metacosmia, or to transcosmize the metacosmia, to move through it, to either alter reality or to reduce reality, one's nature. Paracosmism asserts that such which exists beyond the bounds of the cosmos cannot be described or ascribed by that which resides within the cosmos due to the cosmic limitation principle. So what I'm trying to really do there is kind of, well, the principle of paracosmism states that even these definitions that I'm providing you right now are nothing really compared to what the actual reality is of what I'm talking about. So yes, I'm describing these things to you. Yes, I'm defining these things to you. Yes, we are ascribing appellations to these things that I'm talking about, you know, the divine, the universe, the metacosmia. But ultimately, that these definitions cannot really be, or cannot really be considered as, in a way, not that they're can't be considered true, but that they cannot really ever capture what we're really talking about when we're speaking about the universe. Because again, words are limited, words are finite. So when we're trying to describe something that is infinite, unlimited, words will never be able to comprehend or never be able to capture really what we are referring to here. So again, that doesn't mean that we can't make definitions and descriptions and appellations. It just means that we have to always have in the back of our mind this idea that, yes, we can discuss words and use words, but ultimately these words do not capture the fullness of the reality of what we're actually talking about. What these words are sort of abilities, give us the ability to comprehend these entities. In a way, we have to reduce them to words. We have to reduce them to words to understand what they mean because of our own limited nature. I mean, if we became infinite, unlimited entities, we wouldn't need words to describe what these things are, because we would understand just by our own nature. We wouldn't need to describe them. We would understand anyway, because we would be one of them in that sense. So we now move on to extraspatialism. So part of Astronist belief is the notion that there are existences beyond outer space itself, which embodies the belief that the cosmos exists in a broader, infinite universe. So this is what we call extraspatialism. Extraspatialism is the idea that, yes, there does exist existences beyond outer space, beyond the astronomical world. Of course, this is somewhat denied in other avenues, somewhat in perhaps mainstream physical cosmology, but in Astronism we regard, yes, there to exist realms beyond the outer space. And of course, that's the whole point. The whole point is that there exists existences beyond that, because that's why we want to go into outer space, to reach these existences that exist beyond outer space, beyond the astronomical world, beyond the limited existence of you know, the astral world, the astronomical world. So there are three possibilities of the universe that we can really, you know, sort of assert really. Due to the unknowable condition of the universe to humanity, and again, what I'm trying to say there is that, yes, the universe is unknowable. What I'm speaking to you about today are notions of logic that I've come to. These are conclusions that I've come to that are not absolute conclusions, but they are just notions of logic that I have made about the universe because of what I know or what we understand about the cosmos, okay? So we're not making any assumptions here about what the universe is. We're just making assertions about what the universe is based on our knowledge of the cosmos and how we distinguish the universe from the cosmos, okay? It's really important here to understand our epistemology and how we're understanding knowledge about the universe. This is not coming from divine revelation. This is not coming from some sort of it could have divine origin at some point, depending on what we believe about the year source and intervenience. But of course, the knowability of the universe remains fundamentally limited to, because of our limited nature. So again, the universe remains unlimited conditions. An unknowable condition. So of course, what we can understand about it is limited fundamentally, really. This is why transcension is so important. What can be understood of the universe has to be made from conjecture of what we know about cosmic reality. So either the universe was created by something external to it, so some form of theism, which then suggests that it's not infinite. The universe created itself, so auto-creation. The universe has always existed, infiniteness, which is what the Astronist Cosmology, of course, asserts. And then we have the universe has always existed, but something sustains it, has kept it going for all time. This is what we call sustainment. And of course, we also assert that in Astronism as well. I should just change that to 4 possibilities of the universe, that title, rather than 3. What we need to think about here is that, of course, the last 2 are the ones that are part of Astronist Orthodoxy. These are the ones that we hold to, and, these are the ones that we ascribe to, essentially, in the Astronist Cosmology. Okay, so I've mentioned already that there are differences in terms with regards to the way that Astronism uses the words cosmos and universe, and how they do not always correspond to the same uses of terms in mainstream scientific cosmology. So these are just important to, just to understand, really. I'm going to let you guys read that if you wish, because it's not fundamental to what we're talking about today, but I just thought it'd be interesting for me to include that. But again, if you want to, you can take a look at those. Let's pause it now, and but now we'll continue on. So the debate over the cosmic periphery. So I've already spoken about this a little bit. There is an ongoing debate over the actuality of the periphery of the cosmos. Whether there is an actual edge to the cosmic existence is something that cosmologists are divided on. In Astronism, it is asserted that there does indeed exist a definitive cosmic periphery, a definitive edge to limited existence, beyond which infinite or unlimited existence prevails. The sort of physical cosmological structures that allow for this, again, continue to be studied. Of course, as well, this holds reference to astrosoteriology, because one prominent conception of the ultimation is humanity's transcendence of the cosmic periphery. But if the cosmic periphery is not as it is presently understood, perhaps this does not correspond to the ultimation. So again, even if the cosmic periphery does not exist, there still exists some ultimation for humanity. It may just not be what I have conceived it of right now, which was the idea of transcosmization, which is what I thought the ultimation is. This is to be seen in the future. We may achieve transcosmization in another way. We may achieve transcosmization without needing to even go towards the cosmic periphery. There may be other means and ways of transcosmizing without actually having to transcend the cosmic periphery when I'm talking about the edge of the cosmos in this way. So again, moving back towards the nature of the universe itself, we use this term immobilism really to refer to the universe. If the universe is infinite, then it cannot be expanding because it already is everything that it will ever be. Hence, the universe is immobile. It isn't expanding or moving or changing because it already and always has expanded, moved and changed in all possible ways due to its infinite nature. So hence, it is actually becomes immobile because it is already everything that it could ever be. Okay, follow me with this. The concept of the universe having been being and always being all that it is called immobilism. The universe is therefore static and unchanging because it already is all that which then fundamentally distinguishes it from the ever-changing, ever-moving, and ever-expanding nature of cosmoses. So again, just trying to show the differences here between the universe, universal nature, and cosmic nature again. And we use the word immobilism or immobile to refer to another of these distinctions. So as I've kind of mentioned previously, there are three major positions on the nature of the universe. First of all, there is createdness, the fact of something as having a beginning and an end, a proposed quality of the universe that is rejected in Astronist cosmology. Of course, instead, we opt for what we call uncreatedness or uncreation, the fact of something having always existed because it is infinite. And so, of course, because we regard the universe as infinite, we regard the universe as being uncreated. I spoke a little bit earlier on about this concept of linear infiniteness or inceptivism. It's a really interesting concept. It holds that instead of the universe having always existed, that it was created by the divine, and so affirms the subordination of the former, the universe, to the latter, the divine. However, it goes further to state that the universe was created for infiniteness, hence it will exist eternally, therefore retaining its infinite nature. So the universe in this understanding, in the inceptivist understanding, states that really, again, it's kind of like a sub form of infiniteness. It's not true infiniteness, but it's kind of like a form of it. It's basically saying that, yes, the universe did have a starting point, so it is not absolutely infinite, but from that point, it has always then been infinite, okay? So in that sense, it does retain some kind of infinite nature. It's an interesting idea. It's not upheld in Astronist Orthodoxy, but again, due to our admirationist principles, we do appreciate this idea, and I think it is a very interesting one, you know, and again, requires further debate as time goes on. We also have this idea of auto-creationism, which I mentioned a little bit earlier on, which is the view that the universe created itself. And in a way, what this kind of does is sort of merge the concepts of the divine and the universe into one, or in fact, if anything, renders the concept of the divine kind of meaningless in a little bit. You know, it's interesting whether it could means that it created itself sort of, again, what this kind of has to hold is a rather linear infiniteness of position rather than a total infiniteness position for the universe's nature. It's interesting. Again, it's not upheld by Astronist Orthodoxy, but again, requires more conversation, discussion, discourse. We then also have further sort of understandings of the universe, or further paradigms, if you will, dichotomies, which is what we call the closed universe and the open universe. So the closed universe denotes the notion that the universe is finite by its nature, often justified on the basis that the cosmos and the universe are therein seen as a single entity rather than ontologically distinct. This is kind of where the mainstream cosmologists are sort of heading towards, this idea of the closed universe, this idea that the universe, that's not correct. The idea that the closed universe is held by some astronists, I meant to say, that you know, that the universe is actually infinite by its nature. Astronist Orthodoxy does not hold to this position, though. It states that the universe is certainly infinite and that the cosmos and the universe are certainly distinct entities. You know, because of the cosmic limitation principle, but also because of the distinctions between infinite nature and finite nature. Interesting views. You know, there are two different views here. You know, again, deserves further discussion. Today, I can only sort of explain what these are and then try and ignite debate. This is what my goal is trying to do here. There's further sort of discussion of this closed open universe dichotomy. If you wish to take a read of this, you can do, just pause it here and then take a read of that. I was talking earlier about what we called predependence, okay? But the concept of universal dependence explores the topic of whether the universe is dependent upon any other entity for its own creation or its continued existence. Of course, we've spoke about predependence, the idea that humanity is dependent on things having existed prior to its own existence, you know, in order for it to exist. Obviously, the universe, if it is infinite, then it cannot be dependent on anything else because it has already always existed. So the idea of universal dependence is kind of rejected really in Astronist Orthodoxy. But again, what this really is a sort of discourse really on sort of the universal nature of the divine, the infinite nature of the universe. And of course, you know, this is part of the discussion of the kind of nature really of the fundamental universe, the kind of nature of, is the universe dependent on the divine, and to what degree is it dependent on it? Well, this is really talking about what we see as divine sustainment. To what degree is the universe dependent upon this divine sustainment? How long could it exist without this divine sustainment? These are all ideas. And is it truly infinite then if it is dependent upon this divine sustainment? Interesting. Fusion of existences. Universal fusionism holds that the principles of general fusionism are applicable to universal nature, in that all that is cosmic will eventually conjoin or remerge with the universe into a singular ontology. This form of fusionism is based on the general fusionist belief that all that exists cosmically holds the inevitability of its conjoinment or remerging with another cosmic element as its existential purpose. So really fusionism sees cosmic entities as holding a fundamental nature whereby they will come back together again, that they are distinct components of the cosmos, but that part of the course of the cosmos is that everything within it will come back together, rejoin, and then ultimately the cosmos will end. But what universal fusionism states is that the cosmos itself will refuse to the cosmos, will remerge, will reconjoin to the cosmos, to the universe, sorry, after the cosmos's extinction, which is what we call Caesarea. Again, interesting conversations. We don't have that much time in this lecture to go over them in depth, but again, want to try and ignite these conversations and get them to really think. The universal horizon. So this is talking about the fact that the perimeter of the cosmos is forever eternal, and that to attempt to find it is an admirable mission, but one of fruitlessness, for it is believed that the edge of the cosmos is so close to the universe that the edge itself holds the same maturity of the universe, and as a result is infinite. So this holds that the metacosmia is actually holds a sort of dual nature in a way. It is part finite, but it is also part infinite, and that really this kind of denies really the capacity for humanity to transcosmize. Of course, I don't believe that. I think that humanity will get to the condition where it can transcosmize if we embark upon the endeavor of transcension. But this sort of universal horizon theory is kind of a little bit pessimistic, I think. But we'll keep going. The perfect universe. This is the universe is understood to be so ultimately beyond our own human cosmic nature that the infinite degrees of its possibilities in all cosmoses and dimensions of cosmoses is considered impossible for any cosmic entity to conceive of due to our limited natures and minds. So again, we kind of already have covered this idea, the idea that we can't really know the universe for sure. We can't really know the universe for certain. And this is what we call the perfect universe. You know, of course, this is a concept that is found throughout the Astronist cosmology. The degree to which we hold to it varies, I think, in Astronist orthodoxy. But again, this is a fundamental concept, the idea that the universe is unknowable to us, that we are below the universe in our nature. So now we're going to move on to subsection 3, which covers the foundations 6 and 7. This is where we're going to explore the omniverse, which is the end ocean of expanding. I think that should say the unending ocean, the unending ocean of expanding cosmoses. So I've just changed that slide title there to the unending ocean of expanding cosmoses. Okay, so we're going to be now talking about in this subsection 3, the omniverse. So what is the difference really between the multiverse and the omniverse? In Astronism, there's a big difference. Astronism rejects the notion of a multiverse because it asserts further that the multiverse is actually an omniverse due to the infinite nature of the universe as possessing the capacities to hold an infinite number of cosmoses. Astronism interprets the term multiverse to sort of imply that there are a limited number of cosmoses in the universe, whereas we refer to that as being an infinite number of cosmoses in the universe. So there is a difference there between those two terms within Astronism. Some people may still use the word multiverse to refer to an omniverse, but again, we're trying to make these terms a bit more distinct, really, as the discourse around this conversation becomes more established, really. So let's look at some of the aspects of the omniverse that make it distinct. Well, the concept of the omniverse is based on the notion of innumeralism, that there exists an infinite number of cosmoses in the universe only because of the infinite nature of the universe. And of course, numeralism is what is associated with the term multiverse, which is that there exists only a set number of cosmoses that could possibly exist in the universe. And so that would then deny the fact of the infinite nature of the realm of the universe. So again, the innumeralism is held to by Astronist orthodoxy only because of the infinite nature that we perceive the universe to have. We also have this belief of palingenism, which is the notion that the cosmoses of the universe, of the omniverse in the universe, are continuously rebirthing themselves whenever they do eventually collapse to form new cosmoses in the same place. So this idea is basically that, if our cosmos eventually collapses, that a new cosmos will emerge from a new Big Bang in the exact same position as this cosmos now, and that that new cosmos will evolve differently, that humanity as we are right now will not exist in that cosmos, that there will be different existences, different evolutions, and different maybe forms of matter in that way. Then we have trans-existentialism, or the trans world, which is the notion that any object is able to exist exactly as it does in two separate cosmoses in the omniverse of the universe. So what this is trying to say is that, that you could exist in this cosmos and that you could exactly exist in another cosmos in the exact same way, but maybe with sort of differences of understanding or differences in evolution. So you exist as a material being, but the evolutionary process by which that version of you is taken is different because of the evolutionary differences of the cosmos in which you reside. So essentially what it is trying to say is actually rejected in Astronist orthodoxy because it's not believed that there are exactly two cosmoses that have the same entities within them. All cosmoses is regarded to be unique, to have unique limited natures, whereas this is saying that they have sort of same limited natures, if you know what I mean, sort of similar or same limited natures, which is not the case in Astronist Orthodoxy. But again, it's an interesting concept that needs to be sort of understood and explored. So we have really at the center of sort of omniversal discussions, what we call the 11 omniversal forms. These are 11 primary approaches to the concept of the omniverse, each of which consider different aspects of the omniverse. And you know, some of them may contradict with the Astronist tradition, while others fall in alignment with the Astronist orthodoxy. So the word greenism that we've applied to one of these is to refer to sort of collectivize the 9 types of multiverses that Brian Greene has formulated, sorry. So that's what we call greenism in this context. So the first of these 11 omniversal forms is collisionalism, which notionizes that any one of the cosmoses of the omniverse in the universe could and will at some point collide with one another due to their mutually accelerating expansions, which is known as cosmic clash, and is rejected as being a possible scenario by the Astronist tradition due to the infiniteness of the omniverse. I think what I actually might do is, rather than me just read out these different omniversal forms, what I'll do is sort of pause on the slide and let you guys read them, and then we'll move on to the next form. So there we have collisionalism. Then we have cyclicalism, which then there are 2 sort of branches of cyclicalism, which are dilationist cyclicalism. It's a different word, hard word to say. And then Neo-Formationist cyclicalism. Take a look at the definitions there. Just pause the screen and read those. Again, if there's any terms, you know, that you're not quite sure of or you need more explanation of, just go to the Institutional Dictionary of Astronism, and all of these will be in there, maybe explained in a more succinct way than what I've been able to do in this lecture. So you know, you might be able to want to do that as well. So just pause the screen if you wish, and you can take a look at those. Then we have the main dilationist approach, or dilationism. Again, if you want to read that, take a look at, pause the screen and read that right now. Then we have diversionism, which is another of these 11 omniversal forms. Diversionist approaches are not accepted in the Astronist tradition, but again, just pause the screen and take a look, read, and just try and digest what these different forms of the omniverse mean and or are inferring. Then we have what we call layerism. Apologies, there is a spelling mistake there. I'll just quickly change that. Again, pause the screen now if you wish to take a read of these as a definition, and you can come back to, I mean, as well, ask questions in the comments if you will. You know, if you wish, if you need, you know, ask comments about or questions about these different omniversal forms, definitely. We now have Neo-Formationism, which I referred to a little bit earlier on. Neo-Formation, again, is another of these omniversal forms. So pause the screen now if you wish to take a look at that and read those definitions. And just to, as well, just to sort of see which one you feel you sort of align with more as well. You know, see which one that you sort of believe in more or sort of attracts you more. This is what the part of this exercise is to do, is to try and provide you with these 11 approaches, and then you maybe take 1 or 2 that are ones that you are most attracted to or most feel the most you know, involved with, I suppose, or the most engaged with. We now have oblivionism, which is the notion that black holes are the propagators and sustainers of cosmoses. So that's a really interesting one. Pause the screen now if you wish to continue to read that definition. Then we also have 2 more here, which are called pro-sentientism and pre-sentientism. So again, take a look at those by pausing the screen now. We have simulationism. Again, there's an issue there with the, made a mistake there with the spellings, apologize for that. There's just been such a long lecture. The total immersion is so gigantic, you know, they're bound to have spelling mistakes here and there, so I apologize for that. Again, pause the screen now if you wish to take a look at this definition of simulationism. Then we've got solutionism. Again, these are very similar words, so you just need to make sure that you don't sort of confuse the different ones. These do mean very, very different things with regards to the omniverse. So again, pause the screen if you wish to take a look at that. Then we have Vanarianism, which is the wide-ranging belief orientation that anything that has not occurred or that deviates from that which holds existence or has occurred is only a concept of possibility and therefore not a real existential entity. That principle is then applied to the omniverse and how the omniverse functions, and also how the sort of different cosmoses function as well. So take a look at the definition there if you wish. And now we're moving on to really divine sustainment of all this existence. So we've talked about the cosmos, we've talked about the universe, we've talked about the omniverse, we've talked about all these brilliant, amazing structures in existence. What is sustaining all of these things? And that was the question that I came to. That was the sort of fundamental principle, really, was that what is keeping all these things going? And this is sort of addressed in the foundations 8 and 9 of the Astronist Cosmology. So in Astronist Cosmology, sustainment means the injection of the concept of God into Astronist conceptions of the universe as an explanation of its continued existence. So why or how does the universe continue to exist? This is what sustainment is trying to really answer as a concept. It essentially holds that though not created by the divine, the universe is certainly sustained by it, that the universe is dependent upon the divine for its continued existence. We were just talking earlier about universal dependence and what degree, that type of dependence has an effect on the nature of the universe, the infinite nature of the universe. Is the universe then fundamentally infinite, or is it really more finite in that sense? We'll have to think about that. Because the universe because the divine sustains the universe's ultimate condition of infiniteness and also creates the infinite amounts of limited cosmoses that populate the universe. Okay. So then that brings together sort of this idea of purpose for the universe. If the divine didn't exist, would the universe have a purpose? Because there would be no cosmoses in the universe that the divine creates. So, we have to think about that as well. Approaches to sustainment. Many views exist on the concept of sustainment, from pantheistic to deistic to panentheistic to even atheistic understandings of sustainment. Really, the atheistic idea is kind of removing the idea of the divine as a distinct creating entity and more focuses on the idea of the universe as sort of a self-sustaining entity, a sort of auto-created or either infinite entity that is sustaining itself. Some see the concept of sustainment as detracting from the cosmocentricity of the Astronist belief system, or as otherwise reducing it to a theological ultimate. So it's essentially saying that some people regard the concept of sustainment really as sort of, detracting from this cosmocentric function of the Astronist system. This idea that, gosh, you've gone through all this trying sort of ideas of cosmocentrism and focusing on the cosmos, and then ultimately you say that really we are all dependent upon the divine. So some people have said to me that this is kind of like a cop-out in a way, or a kind of detraction from the cosmocentricity, and I don't really agree with them. I think that if something is an issue, which is why is all this sustained and how is it sustained, we have to try and answer that. And that the divine really, in this sense, is not a theological answer in the same sense as what God is in other religions, but in fact the divine is so interpretable and kind of so unknowable that really it is the right approach, because to say that the divine is anything is really quite difficult. The only thing that I can say is that, yes, I can just make a logical sort of assertion. This is based on logic, really, that because we are limited by our nature here in the cosmos, that then the divine or something, it doesn't have to be the divine, but something must be sustaining us. Something must be keeping us going. whether that is the cosmos itself, or whether that is something outside of the cosmos that is keeping us going. To me, it has to be something outside of the cosmos that is keeping us going, to be honest, ultimately, because if the cosmos is sustaining itself, I get it. I do get it. It's interesting, but it doesn't quite satisfy me. It doesn't quite satisfy me. I think that for something to be sustained, it needs to come from outside itself in order to then sustain it, really, if it is a limited entity. Because I think if you're going to say that the cosmos sustains itself, then really you're moving into territory that states that it's kind of like an infinite entity, really, or an unlimited entity for it to be able to sustain itself, that it has no predependence, that it has no dependence on any other existence before it. So you're sort of moving into sort of infinite territory there. So I'm not really sure about that. This is why I've sort of come to the conclusion that something is sustaining the cosmos, and that I've attached this sustainment property to the divine. Whether that is true, we still need to consider that. We still need to debate it, but I have to come to this conclusion that something is sustaining the cosmos, and that it's not the cosmos itself, that there is something else. We then have what we call the Doctrine of Subordination. So subordinationism is the Astronist doctrine that all cosmic limited existence is subordinate to the universe, and that all universal infinite existence is subordinate to the divine, or divine sustaining existence. Okay, more will be discussed of this topic in the preceding section that focuses on Astronist theology, as I've written there, specifically in the subsection concerning divinology, because we're going to look at the different conceptions of the divine and how the divine then interacts with the cosmos and the universe. So we'll get to that a little bit later on. So here we're moving back into a little bit more of the astro-soteriological discourses here. So we've got deep into the Astronist cosmology in this lecture. Now we need to really relate this back to the human race and our really sort of race to, or endeavor to reach this highest condition. This covers what we call the foundations 10 and 11 of the Astronist Cosmology. And of course, you know, this is related to the endeavor of transcension. So let's begin. Humanity's search for the ultimation. In Astronism, due to the cosmic limitation principle, the cosmos in which we as humankind reside began, and it will also end. Central to astro-soteriology is humanity's endeavor to achieve the highest possible condition it can either be. It can either before its own extinction or before the end of the cosmos itself. We know this already if you've looked at if you watched the astro-soteriology lecture. Both of these extinction events are inevitable to occur, which is why the soteriology of Astronism encourages humanity to fulfill the potential it has through the scope afforded to it by reaching its highest possible condition, whether this means attaining the ultimation or not. And of course, because the astronomical world is regarded as closer to the ultimate condition than the closed system of the terrestrial Earth world, Astronism establishes the cosmocentric worldview in order to encourage humanity to head starward in search for astronomical elixirs so as to achieve transcension. These two slides show how the astro-soteriology is fundamentally intertwined with the way that astronists see the physical structures of the cosmos. So this should now be making more sense to you, how the astro-soteriology is connected really and sort of interdependent upon the Astronist cosmology. It could be said that the astro-soteriology is designed to make the most of the human species before its inevitable extinction or before the cessation of the cosmos itself. And of course, then we come to what we call the transcosmist school of thought within Astronist cosmology. Transcosmism states the assertion that some Astronists that the ultimate purpose of humanity is to transcend the periphery of the cosmos. Transcosmists consider how this transcension to the ultimate may be achieved. And of course, they then relate that back to the astrosoteriology. Much of transcosmist thought influenced the development of the astrosoteriology, which you then should be able to see from the definition just there. This ultimate state or condition of humanity proposed by the transcosmists as achieved upon humanity's transcendence of the periphery of the cosmos is of course called illuminatia, and is considered as an extension to or as a higher form of transcensia. Illuminatia was not included on the later Astronist mechanisms, so just make sure that you notice that it's not included, but in later mechanisms it will be included. So because I'm doing the just today, I've started on the creation of Major Astronist Mechanism 3. So you'll be seeing that very, very soon, hopefully. But it won't be part of this lecture on Total Immersion of Astronism. We then come to what we call the Confinement Principle, which is the principle that, or the entrapment principle, which is the foundational notion of transcosmism, that humanity faces a series of physical obstacles called compoundments that stand in the way of humanity's realization of its ultimate destiny in achieving transcosmization. So of course, what this is trying to say is that, there are numerous physical obstacles that exist that we need to be able to really overcome, really, as a species. First of all, the first one is getting to Mars, for example, and then the next one will be transcending the solar system, and then the next one after that will be expanding to other planets, and the next one after that, the Milky Way, and then further and further on, so all these physical objects are what we call compoundments, and they are sort of physical obstacles, really, to humanity's transcension that we have to overcome, okay? A compoundment then is a closed system environment regarded as an enclosure that humanity must transcend if transcosmization is eventually to be achieved. The first of such compoundments for humanity is, of course, as I've just said, the Earth itself. We may also call compoundments carceria or entrapments. And now we come to the final subsection of this section 5 of the Total Immersion into Astronism, where we talk about the courses of existence. This is where this is addressed really in Foundation 12 of the Astronist Cosmology. And really here we're talking about, I suppose, the different natures again of the cosmos, the universe, and the divine, really in another way to relate them to their temporal differences, the differences between them as they relate to time. So the cosmos represents a limited finite course, okay? This is because of its limited finite nature. Whereas the universe represents a non-linear, infinite course. Anything that is infinite must also be non-linear, okay? And the same for the divine there, represents a non-linear, infinite course, okay? So this is, again, trying to distinguish between the nature of a cosmos and the nature of the universe and of the divine. And now, finally, we come to the 12 foundations of Astronist Cosmology. I'm going to read out these 12 foundations, and then we'll then move into the Astronist Theology, which will comprise the sort of second part of this episode of A Conversation with Cometan. So let's get into now these 12 foundations, really, of the Astronist Cosmology. Okay, so Foundation 1 states that it's a fact of existence in the cosmos that all things are intrinsically limited by their nature, okay? Therefore, that to be cosmic is to be limited. Hence, something infinite cannot exist within something finite. I'll start again. Foundation 1 of the Astronist Cosmology states that it is a fact of existence in the cosmos that all things are intrinsically limited by their own nature. It seems, therefore, that to be cosmic is to be limited. Hence, something infinite cannot exist within something finite. The second foundation states that due to this limited nature of all cosmic entities, anything within the cosmos cannot therefore transcend the cosmic periphery, except without first altering its limited nature to become either universal or divine. The third foundation states that humankind inherits this limited nature by the fact of birth in the cosmos. However, due to humanity's evolved state, it possesses the scope to undergo the change of nature required to transcosmize. This process is embodied by the endeavors of transcension and ultimation. The fourth foundation of Astronist Cosmology states, however, just as things are limited within the cosmos, the accelerating expansion of the cosmic periphery shows us that firstly, the scale between cosmic entities, called the betwixity, is expanding, and secondly, that the cosmos must be expanding into something. This something is what astronists call the universe. The fifth foundation of the Astronist Cosmology states that the universe is the endless expanse whose nature is intrinsically different from that of the cosmos. As it is infinite, it is without beginning and without end, both physically and temporally. Number 6, as the universe possesses an infinite nature, it is only logical to conject that there exists an infinite amount of limited cosmoses in this universe that are to expanding in their accelerations, yet due to the infinite nature of the medium in which they reside, their peripheries are never to meet. This endless collection of cosmoses is appropriately called the omniverse. The cosmos and all other cosmoses in existence are dependent upon the universe for their continued expansion, but the question of how they exist at all is answered in the divine's role of sustainment. That was the seventh foundation of Astronist Cosmology. Apologies for not saying it before I actually started it. The eighth foundation of Astronist Cosmology states that due to the infinite sustaining nature of the divine, it remains totally and absolutely unknowable and unreachable to humankind due to its residence outside the universe, except in instances of divine intervenience. The ninth foundation of Astronist Cosmology states that if the universe is an endless expanse without properties of influence or alteration, then the divine is either an aspect of the universe or an entirely separate entity that possesses the capacity to create and sustain all cosmoses. The 10th foundation of the Astronist Cosmology states that just as the cosmos in which humanity resides once first emerged, it will in some future epoch also end, for this is its nature and that of all other cosmoses. This fact of cosmic existence is unchangeable, yet humankind possesses the potential for reaching its highest condition, either before its inevitable extinction or before the end of the cosmos itself, called the Caesarea. The 11th and penultimate foundation of the Astronist Cosmology states that humankind can only hope to try to change its nature by reaching its highest possible condition to come to know the divine by means of the exploration of the astronomical world in all ways, due to it being regarded as the divine intermediary. And of course, this also relates to the ultimation as well. And then finally, the 12th and final foundation of the Astronist Cosmology states that essentially then the cosmoses follow finite linear courses, while both the divine and the universe may which may in actuality be the same entity, follow an infinite, non-linear course of existence. So there you have it, guys. We've gone through the 12 foundations of the Astronist Cosmology, and I'll be seeing you in the next section of this episode of A Conversation with Cometan, where I will now be going into the, a really deep dive into the Astronist theology. A lot of the conversations that we'll be having in this next section will be connected to this Astronist Cosmology, so that's why I've included it in the same episode. So as we now move into the sort of second half, really, of this episode of A Conversation with Cometan, we move into section 6 of the Total Immersion into Astronism. And of course, this takes us to a topic that is quite controversial within Astronism, quite interesting though still, and that really is sort of the role of God, really, in all of this that I've spoken about so far, in the astrosoteriology, in the Astronist philosophy, in the cosmology of Astronism. Really in this section, what we're going to be looking at is, how do Astronists understand God? How does the concept of God fit into the Astronist belief system, if at all? So some really interesting discussions are coming up, and I hope everyone watching right now is going to be interested to learn more about this section. So really what we can do, or what we should do really to begin with, is to sort of understand the different dynamics within Astronist theology. And what I've done is to try and create this paradigm, really, of, it's kind of like a theological paradigm, I suppose, where we have on the left side here, atheistic Astronism, and the two different forms of that. And then we have theistic Astronism, all of which is depadotheistic. Then we have different concepts of what that depadotheism means. And then we have the different forms of depadotheistic Astronism as a result, which we have there: panentheistic, pantheistic, and deistic. Okay, notice the absence there of monotheistic, usually because really monotheism is associated primarily with the Abrahamic religions, and really Astronism is not monotheistic in the same sense as some of those religions. It's much more panentheistic, or maybe deistic to some degree. So anyway, let's begin with the atheistic Astronism. There are a lot of atheist Astronists, actually, because I think the most important thing to say throughout this section of the lecture is that the existence or non-existence of God really, if you don't believe in God, it doesn't have too much of an effect on your engagement with the Astronist belief system, is the best way to put it, probably. If you do believe in God, then that adds a layer to the Astronist belief system. It provides another avenue to engage with the Astronist belief system. It provides another avenue primarily to astrosis and transcension. But the Astronist belief system, and this is the key point, is not contingent on belief in God. And I think that's the most important thing for me to say in this section of the lecture, that again, the Astronist belief system is not contingent. In order for the system to continue to function, the existence or non-existence of God is irrespective. It doesn't matter whether God exists or not. The Astronist system will still continue. Now, if you took other concepts and ideas out of the Astronist system, such as transcension or astrosis, for example, or even cosmocentrism, then we might have some problems. That's why we call them dogmas. That's why we call transcension a dogma, okay? Because the Astronist system wouldn't be able to function without transcension existing or being to some degree true. Whereas God doesn't come into that. God is not a dogma in Astronism, okay? So that's really important to really drive home there at the beginning, is to say that. For this reason, and for other reasons as well, there are a lot of Astronist atheists, or atheistic Astronists, however you wish to call them, or just simply astronists? I think there's a lot of different reasons for that. I think primarily because, you know, belief in God is not contingent on being an astronist. I think that's definitely a main point. But also I think that the just sort of the physical nature of the astronist belief system, that it places all of its focus on the physical, natural astronomical world, which is something that you don't see in other religions and belief systems. I think that's probably one of the biggest draws for astronism, for atheists to astronism. And of course, within sort of this tradition of atheism within astronism, we have sort of two variants, really. We have what we call negative atheism and then positive atheism. So let's look at the negative atheism here. What is referred to as the divine in Astronist cosmology is not synonymous with the monotheistic God, nor does the divine intervene in cosmic existence. Negative atheism also upholds that the divine's residence or residence outside the cosmos is still affirmed, as is its ontological distinction from the physical universe called the cosmos. Okay, so let's just unpack this. So of course, if you're a negative atheist astronist, then you're going to deny, you're not going to deny the existence of the divine, but as I've said there in the second part, the divine is still affirmed to exist, but there is no sort of godly functions or deity type functions that are attached to this divine either entity, realm, or existence, or force, whatever you wish to call it. Again, as it says there, the divine's residence outside the cosmos is still affirmed as its ontological distinction from the physical universe. Okay, so that's still affirmed in negative atheism. So even though negative atheistic astronism is, of course, atheistic, there is still some conception of the divine. It's just that the divine does not correspond to a sort of more monotheistic understanding of God, or does not correspond to a deity, or does not correspond to something that requires worship, or that requires in a way, sort of any type of function, as it says there, nor does the divine intervene in cosmic existence. So that's kind of a big departure, really, from primarily theistic understandings of or approaches to astronism. That's probably one of the biggest, divergences, you could say. Then we have the more extreme position, which is positive atheistic astronism, which states that the divine in the Astronist cosmology is purely a metaphor for the functional order of the physical cosmos, and therefore does not reside outside of the cosmos, nor otherwise exists in ontological separation from it. So essentially what positive atheistic astronism is saying here is that the divine really doesn't exist in the way that the Astronist cosmology has literally bestowed or has literally described the divine to exist. Essentially, in this form of atheism, the divine is seen as purely a metaphor, and as well for the physical order or functions of the cosmos, and that a separate entity or a separate force or some sort of extra cosmic force is denied, essentially, in this positive atheistic astronism. Okay, so there are the two forms of atheism, two primary forms of atheism within astronism. Okay, then you've got theistic astronism. Okay, which is depadotheistic. So all theistic astronism is depadotheistic at this stage, according to Astronist orthodoxy. All forms of sort of orthodoxical theistic astronism are depadotheistic. Okay, you can't have at this stage a form of theistic astronism that is not depadotheistic if it's going to align with Astronist orthodoxy. So what is sort of encompassed by this term depadotheism is the five following principles, really. we've got the divine does not possess feelings, nor does it hold intentions as humans do. Okay, so this is as we're beginning to understand the divine here. Dipadotheism also rejects any kind of anthropomorphism of divinity, not limited to aniconism. The divine does not play any role in morality, especially not in the judging of human beings. The divine only creates and sustains. Its degree of intervenience is what divides astronists into further subschools. Okay, these are what the subschools are here below. The realistic nature of the divine remains presently unknowable. All that can be known to some degree is that the divine resides outside the cosmic limited nature. Okay, so we've got those 5 principles there of dipadotheism, those 5 fundamental principles that these other branches, as you can see below, must adhere to for them to be orthodoxical. Okay, so on the first section here, we've got panentheistic, which is probably the main orthodoxical sort of confession really in Astronism at the moment. This has the following 3 principles, in addition to the 5 that I've just read out. The divine certainly exists beyond the bounds of cosmic limitation, outside, therefore, the cosmos itself. The divine regularly interpenetrates each of the cosmoses in the universe to influence their courses. Intervenience is therefore affirmed. The divine is larger than the universe, sustains itself, and creates and sustains every cosmos within it. Now that's a little bit more difficult to grasp, because what I've said there, the divine is larger than the universe, which is in alignment with panentheism doctrine. But again, this nature of the relationship between the divine and the universe is so unknown to us, is so beyond to us, that it's difficult for me to try and really say anything with any kind of affirmation. The struggles that I'm having with that final point there is that the universe is supposed to be infinite. So if the divine is larger than the universe, is that possible? But the divine itself is also infinite. So, you know, it's difficult to assert anything really about that. These are just sort of logical assertions about from what we know of cosmic reality in terms of what we're then applying to what may exist outside the universe, and what then may intervene through divine intervenience into the cosmos. Okay. Then we've got pantheistic, which is that the line between the divine and the cosmos is blurred. They are one and the same. They are not ontologically separate. So again, this is sort of moving away really from sort of Astronist orthodoxy in many ways. This is why panentheistic is more towards Astronist orthodoxy at this stage. Because generally we wouldn't really say that, we wouldn't really mix those two together. They are generally considered to be ontologically separate entities. Phenomena within the cosmos is intervened by the divine because the divine is the cosmos. Intervenience is therefore affirmed. The divine is the cosmos. Each creates and sustains the other because they are one and the same. And this remains true for every other cosmos in the universe. But of course, what if the divine and the cosmos are the same thing, then does that not mean that the cosmos has to have some infinite nature attached to it? That then has troubles with limitationism, of course, because limitation says that the cosmos is limited by its nature, that no aspect of the cosmos is unlimited or infinite. So that's why pantheism kind of falls flat really with Astronist orthodoxy, but it still exists. It's still there, and it's still a position to hold. Then we have deistic Astronism, which states that the divine certainly exists beyond the bounds of cosmic limitation, outside, therefore, the cosmos itself. However, The divine neither holds the capacity nor the desire to intervene in any of the cosmoses in the universe, despite having created them. Intervenience is therefore rejected. The divine plays no role in the courses of the cosmos. It has created, which by their functioning, animate natures instead sustain themselves and their courses. So again, the main feature of deistic thought here is that it denies the concept of intervenience. So really, in the end, intervenience is only truly upheld by panentheistic astronism. Pantheistic astronism upholds intervenience, but only on the assumption that the divine and the cosmos are one, which again doesn't really make that much sense when you have looked just at the Astronist Cosmology there, this idea that the cosmos is limited. How can it then be intermingled with the divine if the divine is infinite, sorry. So again, this is why much of Astronist orthodoxy leans towards the panentheistic view, really. And I lean more towards the panentheistic view. I don't believe in pantheistic understandings. And deistic, possibly deistic, but I think I'm more panentheistic, really, out of those three. I would say panentheistic first, then deistic, then pantheistic, if I was going to order them in terms of, you know, how I associate those in terms of my beliefs. So let's move into section 1 now of the actual lecture. So that was just a diagram there that just sort of gave an overview really of the different approaches to Astronist theology. Divinity and its role in Astronism. So what is the role of the divine in the Astronist belief system? For the keen-eyed among you, you will have already noticed during the delineation of the narrative of astronism, and especially in the astro-soteriology, little to no mention of the divine was made, and this was for a particular reason. This is because the human endeavor of transcension and humanity's salvation by means of the astronomical world and all that they encompass are not contingent on theism or otherwise belief in the divine. It is important and shall always remain important to delineate the concept of incontingency in astronism, one form of which is theistic incontingency. That's essentially because astronism is formed by and has entirely different goals and outlooks on the world than, say, Christianity or Islam. The concept that astronism is contingent, contingent upon different are different from these other religions, So what I was trying to get across there was this idea that basically that belief in God is not contingent on being an astronist or engaging with the astronist belief system is the essential term there. I don't want to overcomplicate it, really. This is interesting. So we were just looking at deistic, weren't we? And now we're just going to ask the question again, is astronism deistic? Well, a central tenet of deism is that it rejects revelation as a source of religious knowledge, yet asserts that reason and observation of the natural world are sufficient to establish the justification for God's existence. So, because astronism regards the astronomical world as the existential source, and therefore places all in focus on the astronomical world, does this mean astronism is a form of deism? This is what we have to think about. Just think about that. I've not really gone into much more depth on that because I don't think I need to do it at this stage. I think it's just a case of trying to ignite these discussions. Is astronism deistic because it places all its focus on the astronomical world? Claims about the divine. So significant theological explorations have been made by the Astronist system since its founding by me, and also during the Omnidoxy, I wrote a lot about the divine and its role within astronism and different divinologies explaining what they mean and how they interact with the Astronist belief system. And of course, what it's important to distinct here is that these theological explorations sort of hold no bounds in the concepts that they may toy with and doctrinal claims about the divine in Astronist orthodoxy. So what I'm trying to say there is that really there is an open sort of book, really. There is an open door to the amounts of theological explorations that can take place in Astronism. I don't want to place too much sort of orthodoxy around this. I mean, yes, Dapadotheism and panentheism are my views and primarily the views of Astronist orthodoxy, but I want there to continue these theological explorations. I want there to continue the theological dialogue, essentially. And so different claims then about the divine and what the divine could be are explored within Astronism and Astronist orthodoxy. Nothing is really, things are rejected from Astronist orthodoxy, but the Astronist system itself welcomes these claims and beliefs and different approaches to understanding the divine. So connected to this is what we talk about in Astronism are fields and lines. So we've got theology lines and theology fields. So by extension to this topic of claims about the divine, what must be established here at the beginning of any discourse on theology is that in Astronism there exists theology fields and theology lines that act to segregate discourses for the sake of the discourse to be successful in producing new knowledge. So hence, a theology field is a setting for a theological discourse in which topics relating to God or the divine specifically are held without the influence of overbearing belief systems that may lead to the confinement of the discussion. Essentially, theology fields allow for a person to explore the beyond boundaries of their belief systems, even in a way that may contradict their held beliefs, in order to discuss the top potential truth or possibilities of broader theological topics. So this really, theology fields are about really staying in alignment with the philosophical spirit and really trying to explore theology in a way that is not confined really by these belief systems, kind of compartmentalizing one's belief system in order to engage with and explore theological topics, essentially, is what I'm trying to say here. Trying to keep the doors open, essentially. Whereas theology lines are settings in which theological discourses are confined to certain belief systems. So this is when a discourse takes place whereby a particular belief system expresses its beliefs about God, and those are to be stuck with, and you can only have sort of discussions within that box that has been set with or within that line. Again, these two different types of discussions or discourses are really important because theology fields sort of go off on tangents and all sorts, and they're great, they're really, really good, but then theology lines have this sort of, this really powerful ability to engage with certain belief systems, views on God, drill down into those and really understand, are they correct? Are they rational? Do they have reason and justification for what they are claiming? So again, there's two different functions there for these two different types of theological discourses. So due to Astronism's cosmocentric worldview, the existence of God is important only by the degree to which God influences the endeavor of transcension. Really, really important. That is probably the most important thing to say, is that God is only important within Astronism according to the degree to which God influences the endeavor of transcension. This is because Astronism is analypsocentric. It is focusing on the endeavor of transcension. If God doesn't play any role in that, or God can't intervene in the universe to help us or to engage with the endeavor of transcension, then God isn't important in Astronism. And that is the bottom line. The bottom line is, does God engage with or sort of explore with us or help us in the endeavor of transcension? If that isn't true, then God isn't important in the Astronist belief system. That is the bottom line. That's not saying that God doesn't exist, but what it's saying is that God doesn't really matter in that belief system. Whether God exists or not doesn't matter if God plays no role in the endeavor of transcension, okay? So in this regard, humanity's achievement of transcension precedes the importance of God's existence. As such, God is only relevant in Astronism if indeed God is the mastermind or an agent of transcension, okay? If God is leading the intendants, leading the, or influencing the economy of transcension, then yes, God is very much important, is very much relevant to the Astronist belief system. But if God is not doing that, if it's found that God is not doing that, if God is not involved in that economy of transcension, then it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter to the Astronist belief system, because the Astronist belief system is focused on this endeavor of transcension. Whether that endeavor of transcension leads us to God is a whole other question, okay? But what the endeavor of transcension is the central component of Astronism. And so if God doesn't have an involvement in that, God doesn't matter. That doesn't mean we're atheistic. It just means that God doesn't matter to the Astronist belief system because God has no role in that. Most theistic Astronists would assert, however, that God does play a role in the Astronist belief system. And so that's why most Astronists, you know, they either fall into, of course, the atheistic or theistic functions. You'd find very few Astronists who believe in God, who also believe that God doesn't have any role in, you know, in the endeavor of transcension. That is sort of a deistic role. That is a deistic position, really, because deism obviously denies intervenience. So really then, God's role in Astronism is based on this concept of intervenience, the capacity for the divine or the God to intervene in the cosmos and to influence humanity and to influence transcension. That is essentially what the most important thing for Astronist theologians or theists to answer. To what degree does God have an intervenience in the cosmos that may affect transcension? Okay. In Christianity, for example, God is seen as the centrality of salvation. I can't quite see what that says, but such a presupposition is not made in Astronism about God's role, precisely because salvation in Astronism, which is what we call transcension, is regarded as intimately intertwined with venturing into the astronomical world, or subsuming into the astronomical world intellectually, spiritually, and physically, okay? In this way, because of the knowability of the astronomical world, salvation through it is the primary focus, with the knowability of, or generally coming closer to God, being seen as just one benefit of the endeavor of transcension. The astronomical world is focused on a salvation because it's focused on as a source of salvation because of its knowability and its physical position in relation to humanity. So essentially what I'm saying there is that I'm essentially saying that, of course, you know, there exists this, of course, this function to, there exists this function to the astronomical world that it is a source of salvation, of course, but at the same time, we also have this idea of God as having a role in that salvation. To what degree is still up in the air because of the unknowability of the divine. I think really the reason why Astronism focuses I think the reason why Astronism focuses on the astronomical world as a source of salvation is because that's the only place that we see as the knowable source of salvation. God can be believed as a source of salvation, but what can be knowable is what we're focusing on in Astronism, the knowability of the astronomical world. So these degrees of intervenience of the divine on humanity's endeavor of transcension remain in dispute, primarily because of the unknown nature of the divine itself. That's why I never really make a claim to say that my experiences of astral ecstasy, indrasy, celestial mode are of divine origin, because I don't know. I can believe that, but I don't know that. Sometimes I do believe that. And sometimes I do believe that other people that I know who've had similar experiences or different types of experiences, that their experiences are of divine origin. We don't know. We don't know for sure. And so that's why we can only make a claim to that. We can only say, well, yeah, we do think that, we believe that, we think that, but we don't know that. And there's a difference there between those two things. And that's fine. I think if someone wants to be able to, if someone wants to believe something, that's absolutely fine. We need to have that. We can't, I mean, I stand up for freedom of religion or belief. I'm doing my PhD in it, my PhD in the subject at the moment. And if someone, I came across someone recently who said that, yes, their writings are of divine origin. Fine. That is absolutely fine for you to believe that. You know, of course, I'd have to look into them more to understand whether they are of divine origin. You know, did I believe him at the beginning that a divine origin? Possibly. I don't take it so seriously. This comes down ultimately to the inclusive nature of astronism. And that's what it comes down to. It's an attitude, really, honestly. It is an attitude. It is a positive attitude. Because Christianity and Islam are exclusivistic religions, they're the only source of knowledge. They're the only source of divine truth. They're the only source of revelation. Because they take that approach at the very beginning, nothing else that anyone else talks about or anyone else says that is beyond the bounds of their belief system can be true or can be real or can be listened to. That's not astronism. That is not astronism. No, I take a different approach. I don't take things so seriously, and I don't take things so exclusively. I can speak to this person I was speaking to, for example, who said that, you know, they have divine origins, their writings are definitely from God. That's absolutely fine for them. That's fine. Yes, you believe that. To some degree, I believe that. If you believe that, then I believe that. If that makes you feel good, and if that makes you feel content, and that gives you some explanation as to why you have experienced what you have and why you've written what you've written, then that's absolutely fine. I'm not saying that astronism, and of course I'm not saying that myself, that I'm the only source of something. I think that is just such a, it comes back to the anthropocentricity. It comes back to the ego, and it comes back to really saying that, well, we have all the answers. That's very egoistic, isn't it? So it's the approach that is taken. It's the approach, and we always have to remain in astronism inclusivistic, inclusive of different beliefs. That doesn't mean we have to believe them all, but we have to be inclusive. This is what the philosophical spirit is all about. This is what freedom of religion or belief is all about. So anyway, enough of my preaching. I'll just, you know, continue on with this lecture, but I just wanted to get that across, is that these are different approaches that astronism has to what other religions have. And our approach is more of an inclusive one rather than an exclusive one. Okay, so when we talk about heterodoxy and orthodoxy, I'm really not talking about these words, or even dogma and doctrine. I'm really not talking about these words in a way that they are used in other types of religions. I'm really not using them in such a harsh, hardline way. I'm simply just using them as a way of defining different beliefs from one another, and trying to get to what is astronism, trying to get to the best version of astronism. I can tell you right now that what I'm presenting to you in the Total Immersion right now, Yes, there are brilliant aspects of it, and I love it, and I've worked so hard to bring this to you. But this is not the highest version of Astronism. This is not the greatest version of this belief system. This belief system is primitive still. It will continue on. It will continue to get better. It will continue to be able to answer more and more questions as it goes on. If the approach remains the same, and if the approach remains inclusive and as part of the philosophical spirit. Okay. So anyway, let's continue. So this touches on an interesting quality of Astronism in that it cannot be considered as wholly a religion, because an all importance is not placed on God and God's role in the endeavor of salvation. So again, this is why Astronism's, yes, we refer to it as a religion sometimes, but in actual fact, if we're going to have a very narrow definition of what a religion is, which is the idea of the existence of gods and gods being central to some sort of salvation process, then Astronism is not a religion then, because Astronism places an importance on the astronomical world through transcension as the source of salvation, not on God. God may be an agent in that endeavor of transcension if God exists and if God intervenes, but God itself is not the source of salvation at this stage in Astronism. Okay, when I say at this stage, what I mean is that there may be times in the future where we have better knowledge, where things are revealed perhaps more, where, I don't know, we get to higher conditions, ultimation stages, you know, where we understand God, or we see God, or we meet God, or we meet the divine, whatever it is. Then we may change our mind and say, well, yeah, this is the end goal of transcension. Some people believe that. Some astronists regard the ultimation as the divine itself, and that is absolutely fine. There's nothing wrong with that at all. That probably is what the ultimation is. If we can get to that, if humans can get to that condition and come to know that condition, then yes, that is the ultimation. So this quality of Astronism as being cosmocentric rather than theocentric highlights how Astronism is classified as an astroncy rather than exclusively a religion. This is why I had to create this new category of belief systems called astroncy in order to, we also call it stellancy sometimes, but don't get confused with the confinement of stellancy when I use it in relation to astroncy, but mainly we use astroncy though. The reason why I've created that is because there doesn't exist a category of belief systems that regard the astronomical world as the source of salvation like astroncy does, so like Astronism does. So this is why I had to create astroncy, because I think it was more specific really to the beliefs of Astronism, more accurate. In Astronism, we also have theories, different approaches, different understandings of different theologies. And one of these that has been produced is what we call the submission manumission dichotomy. Really, the distinction between these two terms comes in the nature of theological discourses and how these were established in the Omnidoxy, essentially, to form a kind of spectrum of positions regarding judgment of morality. So Astronist Orthodoxy affirms what we call manumissionism, which is the principle that emphasizes freedom of individuals rather than submission. Such a contradistinction between freedom and submission has since been interpreted by me as distinguishing Astronism from Islam. So sometimes Astronism is actually closely associated with Islam, funnily enough, in some ways, because well, I was speaking to one of my Muslim scholar friends, and he's brilliant, really. And I was telling him about Astronism and some of the beliefs and things like that. And he said, this sounds a little bit like Islam, because Astronism, you know, we reject the anthropomorphism of God, which is what Islam does. And also there is a rich tradition of sort of astronomical emphasis in Islam to some degree. Of course, Islam does not support majority of the Astronic tradition, really, but some you know, some sort of beliefs in astronism correspond to Islam to some degree. But then came along this sort of manumissionism understanding from astronism, and then my friend said, well, oh, you've kind of moved away from Islam now. So again, this is trying to distinguish astronism from everything else. Essentially because Islam literally means to submit to God. So it's actually a verb that means to submit to God. And really what astronism could be understood is to really gain freedom from any type of constraint, really. That's what astronism means. It means freedom from constraints. It means freedom from obstacles, compoundments, I think I called them earlier on today. This is what astronism means. So in that sense, submission in astronism is a big no-no. No, we do not submit to anything, really. We want to be free. We want to release ourselves from any types of constraints in order to gain these higher conditions. We see submission as the ultimate the ultimate bad thing, really, the ultimate sort of obstacle to astronism, really, to transcension. So such a manumissionist position has no doubt come to influence the development of the Astronist doctrine of eleuthanism, which is the principle that freedom is the most righteous concept and the most righteous endeavor to try and achieve. And that's what we call eleuthanism, okay? So there's good comparisons there between the two, Islam and astronism. And obviously comparisons will continue as time goes on. So here we come with astrotheism. This is a term that I have referred to previously in this lecture series of the Total Immersion. And as I think I've said previously, there are many different definitions for astrotheism as a term. I'm just going to go through some of them here. Actually, I might not read these out, actually. If you guys just want to pause the screen, you can take a look at these definitions. I don't want to do too much reading on the screen, you see. So if you just take a look at these definitions and read those, pause, and just take a minute just to think about these different approaches, definitions of astrotheism. Then we come on to reception. So the word reception in astronism is pretty important. It's used to refer to divine interpenetrations into the cosmos. But specifically, reception is for a specific type of divine interpenetration. And it's for interpenetrations that cause inspiration in a scoped sapient being or beings. Reception is therefore distinguished from revelation in that the former is less direct in its nature than the latter. So receptions are not sort of the divine telling you, or like an angel coming down to say, this is what's going to happen in the future, or, you know, this is what God wants you to do. Receptions are much more indirect in their nature. They're related really to what I experienced in my indices and what I continue to experience in astral ecstasies and in celestial modes and all these different forms of reception, really, within astronism. Again, these form the basis of what we call inspired doctrines or the inspired religions. This is what reception is really talking about here. And it is classified as one of the knowledge sources of astronism, not the only knowledge source, not the superior knowledge source, but just one of the knowledge sources of astronism. And really, it kind of is, like I've said, it's kind of an indirect form of revelation in some ways. It's an indirect, less literal form of revelation, of divine revelation. It's sort of an indirect form of divine revelation that comes through in the inspirations, ambitions, ideas, sort of endeavors, really, of human beings and their different experiences. Primarily in relation to the astronomical world. We wouldn't use reception in relation to something that wasn't related to transcension or the astronomical world. So there is a little bit of a narrowing of its usage there. from perhaps revelation, which has a much more broader usage, really. So really, reception is a watered down version of revelation in some ways. It's an indirect form of revelation, and it is sort of indirect. And not just that, it's not just indirect, it's also, it's kind of harder in a way to, more relative in a way, harder to sort of determine in many senses, but in perhaps in other senses it is easier to determine. I mean, we don't know whether Muhammad received his revelations. We don't know, or any other prophet that's claimed to have revelations. But perhaps in contemporary times, if we can see a person going through these sort of ideas, and especially with regards to transcension, the endeavor of transcension, of course, is made a central focus of reception in Astronism. If you can see that, then and the products of that, whether that be something like the Omnidoxy or even something like the Quran or the Bible, these products of reception or revelation are in some ways proof of something happening. So, you know, it's interesting. It's an interesting area of Astronism, and I think it's particularly important for me, you know, as a person who I believe I have experienced this to some degree. So, you know, it's important for me to kind of understand really how I go about explaining my experiences in a way that, you know, I stay relatable, but also I actually do get across the importance of what I've experienced, but also, you know, the fact that any other person could experience something similar, you know, that another person could experience just as much reception and indracy and celestial modes as I have, you know. So here we come on now to a branch of Astronist theology, which is called divinology. So this is specifically looking at the study of the divine and different approaches really to understanding different conceptions of the divine. In the previous subsection, we're looking more at sort of different approaches to broader Astronist theology and some of those central concepts like reception, obviously. But in this section, we're going to be focusing specifically on the studying of divinity. So although the term divinology denotes the branch of theology studying the nature of the divine from the Astronist Cosmology, a divinology denotes a particular conception of the divine. In this regard, there exists many divinologies within Astronism, as the nature, substance, and functions of the divine are not dogmatic or set in stone, except when such attributes contradict what we know of the physical cosmos, such as cosmic limitation. This really important that actually, if you just pause it now and just read that section again and just try and understand what I'm trying to say there, just read that again there, because that's quite important for understanding the nature of the divine and its role really in the Astronist belief system. So the study of divinity in this way captures the philosophical spirit really at the heart of Astronism. Really, that Astronism corresponds not to the laying down of dogma and expecting all to accept such dogmas, but that Astronism is a forum, a vehicle for discourse on the most important topics in existence, a forum that continues to move, to change, to get better as time goes on and its discourses develop. And of course, this is really why we refer to Astronism sometimes as the Astronist system. It is a system that needs to continue to get better. It is a system that needs to continue to essentially improve as time goes on by contributions from different people. I want to create something here that is so vast and so all-encompassing that many different people with different views are able to fit within it and still feel at home. I think that's the only way forward, really, for freedom of religion or belief around the world, essentially. And also the only future that I see for Astronism and the future that I want for it. So the dogmas that are laid down in Astronist Orthodoxy are indeed regarded as uncontrovertibly true for the context of the Astronist belief system, essential for the Astronist system to continue to function as a mechanism. Securing the objective truths of these dogmas is likely still out of reach for the present condition that humanity is in. So what I'm trying to say there is it's just exploring this idea of dogma really in astronism, and also just kind of delineating the fact that, you know, these dogmas, yes, they do exist. Transcension is one of them. They exist because they are essential to the Astronist system, but the objective truths of these dogmas is part of the Astronist system to try and assert, to try and justify, to try and see through. Essentially, that's what the Astronist system is all about. It's asserting transcension as uncontrovertibly true, but then it's also trying to live out that truth in a way, live out that truth in life, and live out that truth in the future of humanity. Essentially, that's what the Astronist system is trying to do. So if we just go back off, sorry from the tangent there, but there are some sort of delineated divine attributes that we can sort of attribute to the divine, characteristics of the divine that we can kind of make from what we know about the cosmos. And some of these exist as the divine independence, the idea that nothing existed prior to the divine in order for the divine to exist. So again, that is a basic contrast from the nature of the cosmos. Then we have divine interpenetration, or interpenetrativity, which is the idea that, of course, the divine is able to interpenetrate all of the cosmoses in the universe. That is based on the idea, of course, of intervenience. But really, I suppose interpenetration is something slightly different from intervenience. The way I would sort of distinguish the two is that intervenience really focuses on divine interpenetrations that come to affect human lives and also come to affect the endeavor of transcension, whereas interpenetrations generally of the divine may not be related directly to the transcension. They may be more broad. They may just refer to the functions of the cosmos. They may not refer to transcension. So when we use the words intervenience and interpenetration, really interveniences are a kind of specific form of divine interpenetration, really. And then, of course, we have this Omni Creativity attribute of the divine, which is that, you know, it has the capacity to create endless amounts of cosmoses in the universe. And of course, that is supporting the idea of the omniverse existing and the nature of the omniverse as that is distinct from, you know, well, the nature of the universe as that is distinct from the omniverse, the cosmos. So again, these are just some functions and some attributes of the divine that are made through what we know about the cosmos and distinguishing from the cosmos what the divine could be. And again, these are part of how we understand and try to conceptualize the divine. We then have what we call divine plans, which are, you could say, a product of intervenience. We have what we call the universal plan, which is the notion that the divine is exercising a plan for the entire universe. Then, which includes all, obviously, the cosmoses of the omniverse. Then we have the cosmic plan, which is the notion that the divine is exercising a plan for each of the limited cosmoses in the universe, but not for the universe as a whole. Really, the first one there relies on the idea of sustainment, the idea that the divine is sustaining the universe and in such a way is then exercising a plan for the universe as a result. Then, of course, we also have personal plans, the notion that the divine is exercising a plan for each unique, independent, sapient, scoped being in each of the cosmoses in the universe. So again, this brings a very personal aspect to the divine, kind of like a personal intervenience in a way of the divine being or divine force, whatever way you wish to conceptualize the divine. You know, again, just to go off another tangent, the divine can be conceptualized in many different ways, as a being, as a force, as a sort of entity. These different words are used, and they're all used really to try and grasp what this divine could be, really. So agnosticism plays a very, very important role in Astronist theology specifically. And this is based, and I've already kind of inferred this already when we talk about the unknowability or the knowability of the contrast between the unknowability and the knowability of the divine and the astronomical world, respectively. The Astronist Orthodoxy maintains that what is known of the divine can only be made through observations of the cosmos and the distinction between their natures. So essentially, I've already spoke about this, but I'll just reiterate that all that we know, or all that is claimed about the divine, or all that is made a conclusion of about the divine, or all that is asserted about the divine in Astronism are based on distinction or contradistinctions between the cosmos or cosmic nature and what then would be divine nature or the divine. So they're based on what we know about the cosmos, because we don't really know anything for sure about the divine. Okay, so these are essentially the kind of like conjectures, really, the kind of like conjectures into what the divine could be based on what we know about what the cosmos is. Okay, this is what these are. And really a primary concern in Astronism that will be more fully addressed in the section on Intervenience is called origin agnosticism. This asserts that although the divine certainly exists and interpenetrates phenomena in the cosmos as a result of the beliefs of panentheism in Astronism, the difficulty remains in deciphering which phenomena is indeed of direct divine origin. The determination of such and its degree of regularity is not considered to be presently conceivable in humanity's current condition. But of course, you know, if we do embark upon transcension, and if we do attain that ultimate state, that ultimation, hopefully by then we will have a much closer relationship with whatever is divinity, a much sort of better understanding of whatever is divinity. And of course, that's the whole point of transcension. That's the whole point of the Astronist system, that we should then become closer to whatever is the ultimate. And if the divine is the ultimate, then we will become closer to the divine as a result. Then as time goes on, of course, agnosticism will hopefully become less and less so as transcension becomes more and more so. So we also have this idea of cosmontism, which is a close divine cosmos relations. So the depadotheistic panentheistic school of Astronist theology, which is the present conviction of Astronist orthodoxy, encourages what we call cosmontism. Cosmontism describes a very personal interaction between scoped species, the astronomical world, and the divine, particularly as this relates to directly divine knowledge impartation. In this regard, observation, interaction, and exploration of the cosmos are regarded as intimate sources of divine interaction and knowledge. So essentially what this is based on is the ideas of intermedialism and portalism, the ideas that, you know, the astronomical world is an intermediary between humanity and the divine, and that through the astronomical world, we can become closer to whatever is divinity, and we can become closer to really and interact with and gain more knowledge about the divine through the astronomical world. And really what cosmontism is trying to promote here is this sort of closeness of a more close relationship between humanity, the divine, and of the cosmos and the divine. It's trying to create a sort of cosmic filiation, we usually call it, as I've written there. So now we move on to really the nature of the astron, really, the nature of this astron force. And I've referred to this a couple of times in this lecture and in previous subsections, of course. But at the same time, I've also tried to not focus too much on it until now, of course. So really, the astron is the divine as active in the world, or the divine as active in the cosmos. So what we have to sort of, the presupposition of this subsection is that the divine certainly exists, and that intervenience is taking place. Really, the astron is the product of divine intervenience, essentially. That's what the astron is. It's the manifestations of the interpenetrative activities of the divine. So then, therefore, the term Astronicism, not to be confused with Astronism, is often invoked to denote belief in the astron, or to reference an interpretation of astronism that places a particular emphasis on the functions of the astron, because not all, generally, sort of mainstream orthodox astronism wouldn't place too much emphasis on the astron, because it's contingent on belief, firstly, in the intervenience of the divine, and not only that, but sort of direct, very involved, very regular interveniences of the divine in the endeavor of transcension. And those things, again, by Astronist orthodoxy, are taken as agnostic or faith-based assumptions or presumptions. So in Orthodox astronism, you wouldn't really find much conversations taking place about the astron, but certainly within transtellationism, within certain cosmistic schools, certainly within prismatics, of course, and certainly within divinology, the study of divinology would definitely have these conversations. Of course, then the concept of the astron is most popular among the panentheistic and pantheistic conceptions of the divine. And of course, as well, another reason why the astron is not spoken of too much is that we don't want to suggest that belief in the astron, or that engagement with the astron, is integral to achieving the astrosoteriology, or the goals of the astrosoteriology. That is not the case whatsoever. And so that's another reason why sort of a lack of emphasis is placed on the astron when we're talking about astrosoteriology. Yes, sometimes a layer of beliefs can be placed upon the astrosoteriology, and that's absolutely fine, but the astrosoteriology must exist, and also to some degree the astroeschatology must exist as independent from this concept of the astron, and even the concept of the divine, as I've said previously. So when panentheistic school asserts that the divine interpenetrates cosmic existence, it is by way of the astron, or astronic energy, that such penetrations into the cosmos occur. The functions of astronic energy then are also commonly invoked to justify certain beliefs in the school of transtellationism, but this is not universally the case. One example is astranthropy. Another examples are, just beliefs that in post-astrosis. Trying to think of some more that are really based in this idea of the divine. Really, a lot of translationist beliefs are. Often the astron is sort of the fundamental basis, really, of much transtellationist activity, or transtellation activity. So again, astron force is very important to the transtellationist school, and is also, of course, very, very important to astro-spirituality more broadly, and also to prismatics, the study of astro-spirituality. So is the astron new? Well, in some ways, yes. In other ways, not. Because if you've done your homework about religions, you will know that there exists the Chinese metaphysical notion of the Tao, and also the Dharmic concept of prana. These are very similar concepts to the astron. These describe sort of metaphysical energy fields that pervade the universe. And really, the astron force is really a form of these types of metaphysical notions or energy fields, but is particularly focused on the astronomical world as its principal source. So generally, the Tao wouldn't place too much emphasis on the astronomical world, neither would the concept of prana, but the astron does. The astronomical world is seen as the source, or as at least the intermediary, not usually the source, but certainly the intermediary of where this Astron force comes from. So it comes from the divine, but it comes through into the cosmos by way of the astronomical world. So the astronomical world is seen as the source of this energy rather than really the terrestrial world. The terrestrial world has pockets of this energy, but it is not in any way the source of this energy, which again is not really, I don't think, made very clear in the Tao or the prana concepts of some Eastern religions and philosophies. So again, there certainly is, you could say that the Astron really is the astronomical version really of the Tao and prana concepts. That's what you could make from this really, which is very interesting, because then that suggests, well, is there sort of greater connections between Astronism and these Eastern religions than perhaps what I first thought? I definitely think there is. In some ways, I do think that Astronism is closer to those Eastern religions, even though it still belongs to the Astronic tradition, than it is to the Abrahamic religions, really, in many ways. So, astronomical metaphysics. So, in understanding this concept of the Astron force, we then open up really a door to this astronomical metaphysics, this idea that there exists a metaphysics in relation to the astronomical world. And what this then opens up the idea of is that the astronomical world, as I've said before, is a sort of mediative source of all energy existent in the cosmos, and that this comes by way of divine origin through divine interpenetrations and interveniences in the cosmos, or any of the cosmoses of the universe. So fundamentally, if intervenience is indeed true, then the Astron is the way by which intervenience could be practically bestowed. So what you could understand about this is that the divine initiates interpenetrations, that the Astron force is the product of those interpenetrations, and that then interveniences in the lives of human beings and other sapient species and sentient species, to some degree, sorry, is then these interveniences are then sort of the products of the Astron itself. So that's how you could sort of understand the hierarchy there of how these metaphysical concepts are taking place or taking form. But again, you know, this is a very interesting area of study, and one that, you know, I do love metaphysics myself. I study the ideas of the Tao and prana quite often. And of course, you know, I do think the Astron really, as I've said, is the sort of astronomical version of these very ancient forms of metaphysical notions, essentially, metaphysical forces. And really, the Astron is kind of like a cosmocentric version, in a sense, of these Tao and prana concepts. So I've spoken so much about intervenience, but I've not done yet a section on it. So we need to look at this. What is the question of intervenience, and really what are its consequences in many ways? You know, what are the consequences of the truth of intervenience, if it is indeed the truth? So we have what we call really different types of Astronist prayer. These are Astrancy, which is consultation of the stars, Astrine, cosmic devotion, and so on and so forth. If you want to take a look at the full definitions of these terms, you can take a look by going to the Astronist dictionary, the Institutional Dictionary of Astronism, which was published just a couple of months ago, and all these terms will be in there, so you can take a look at those hopefully once you finish this lecture, or just pause me and go and take a look at the definitions, because you might be interested in sort of the differences between these different types of Astronist prayer. And of course, yes, we do pray in Astronism, and of course I pray, definitely. I do believe in a very close relationship with the astronomical world a close relationship with the divine through the astronomical world. So in that sense, I'm quite translationist in some ways. And again, I do sort of shift from one to another, but yeah, sometimes I do pray and I do feel that connection through the astronomical world to the divine. And I think that's really captures the essence of Astronist prayer, really. What we call the earnesture is the sort of primary gesture of Astronist prayer. You may have seen me in a photograph or an illustration conducting this activity of the earnesture. And it sort of distinguishes Astronist prayer from other forms of prayer, such as the Christian placing of hands together, or the Islamic form called Salah. The first, which is called dextrosture, involves the right hand sitting on top of the left, which is to be invoked when a person is asking for something in prayer and devotion. Obviously, this is represented in the image to the right, while the lathosture involves the left hand in dominant position on top of the right hand, which is to be performed when the person is telling something. So in Astronism, there's this really big distinction between asking for something of the divine, asking for some type of certain intervenience, but then also there is a difference between that and then telling the divine something, telling the astronomical world something, telling the cosmos something, putting it out there to the cosmos, which is related to pharency. I think I spoke about pharency in the astrosoteriology lecture, so take a look at that if you're interested in pharency. But essentially, intervenience is actually a problem in astronism, and we call it the intervenial problem. Really, it's a topic of ongoing debate among astronist philosophers and theologians as it regards the nature and degree to which the divine interpenetrates the cosmos. And again, because of the unknowability of the divine, this unknowable nature of the divine and its actions and intentions, and well, it's sort of Dipadotheism says that there is no intentions for the divine. So what does that then mean for these interveniences? If there is no intentions of the divine, why is it doing these things? Why is it engaging in intervenience if that is the case? What is its nature? What does it want us to get to? Supposedly the divine has no sort of anthropomorphic understanding, so there's no desires for the divine. Then what is the purpose of the divine existing at all? So these questions continue. And of course, my view on that is that the divine doesn't necessarily have desires for us, but I think there are preset sort of destinies for us that are centered on transcension, of course, for species. And I think not that the divine wants us to engage with transcension, but that the divine has given us the opportunities to, if we wish to do that. If that's what I would say, if I was really to get into sort of that deeper theological discourse, is that I would say that yes, that transcension is divinely destined, that the divine wants us to engage with transcension to some degree, that we have the confirmants to prove that we have the confirmants and tools to engage in transcension, and really that, yes, that provides us with the life meaning, but that really there's going to be no punishment per se if we don't engage with transcension, or that we're not going to be judged if we engage with transcension. I think that's the main depadotheistic understanding of the divine. But again, all up for the debate, because really what can be known of the divine is so little right now. All we can know of the divine to some degree is what we know of the cosmos, and sort of contrasting what we know about the cosmos and then really sort of creating a sort of opposite to the divine in that sense, sort of what we know of the cosmos, and then sort of an opposite to that we form what we call the divine, and that's how the concept of the divine has emerged really in astronism. Really everything that the cosmos is not is what the divine is, essentially. So we also have Provenience, which is the investigation into the divine proximity or divine origins of something. So especially regarding confirmants, astronomical phenomena, receptions and ideations. This is what we call provenience or provenance. And really the attribute and condition of being of divine origin, really. You know, or regarded as closer in physical and ontological proximity to the divine than some other environment or entity, you know, is attributed to the astronomical world, you know, as directly divine, while humanity is regarded as indirectly divine. So again, there's a kind of mini hierarchy here as to the degree to which something is proximate to divinity, essentially. And of course, you know, humanity is at the bottom of the rung there, whereas the astronomical world is higher up the rung, closer to the divine, of course. So in the astrosoteriology, I spoke a lot about, and also a little bit in the Astronist Cosmology, I spoke a lot about the changing of the nature of humanity, essentially. The changing of the nature of humanity to reach what we call this ultimation, but also to achieve transcosmization, perhaps, or to achieve transcension. And what this physical process is, this sort of physical elevation, really, of the nature of something is what we call acroscription. Okay, so if you want to take a look at the definition here, you can read that. It's really, really interesting. And it's kind of a very central aspect of the astrosoteriology as well. It's kind of a process, really, rather than any type of condition, but it just relates to this elevating of the nature of something, the changing of the nature of it. Whereas circumscription is the opposite. So circumscription is the lowering, the lowering of the nature of something to a lesser existence, essentially. And of course, this is related to the divine. This is attributed to the divine when it intervenes in the cosmos. So this is why I've included this here, because this is really about intervenience, the idea that the cosmos, that the divine has to kind of lower its nature, really, to become, to be able to engage with the cosmos, to be able to engage in sort of limited existence, coming down really from its infinite existence to a limited existence through what we call the Astron force, of course. We also have Sidericism, as has already been delineated. The Siderisis, which refers to the narrative of Astronism, is asserted in Astronism as having been divinely planned. So Sidericism is this idea that the Siderisis has been divinely instructed, and again is related to this concept of intendance and the economy of transcension, this idea that transcension is divinely planned, is divinely instructed, is divinely predetermined, divinely destined, whatever word you would like to use. That's what Sidericism asserts. Okay, it places the divine as a really central role, really, in the sort of overseeing of the activities of transcension and the goals, really, of transcension, essentially. So we've now made it to the end of this lengthy episode of A Conversation with Cometan here. And really, as I've done in the other sections, I'm going to end this episode with going just over the 12 components of Astronist theology. And really, these should then allow you to really gain a good understanding, a sort of concise understanding of everything we've just talked about, and sort of the notions of logic that I've taken to sort of get to my conclusions that I have. Of course, I'm just going to read those now, and then I'll do some sort of concluding remarks, and then I'll be seeing you guys in the next episode. So first of all, let's get on with the 12 components. So the first component of Astronist theology states that the Astronist belief system is not contingent on a belief in a higher power. However, such a belief applied to Astronism adds a further layer to its eschatology. Sorry. I'll start again. So the first component of the Astronist theology states that the Astronist belief system is not contingent on belief in a higher power. However, such a belief applied to Astronism adds a further layer to its eschatology and soteriology, namely an additional means of achieving transcension. Whether God exists or not, transcension remains the goal, or the ultimate goal of Astronism, or the ultimate endeavor or process of Astronism. The second component of Astronist theology states that on the presupposition of the existence of God, of a God or gods, humanity's preferment in the cosmos was granted through means of divine will, and is therein sustained through divine intervenience in the cosmos. The third component of Astronist theology states that by extension, the human endeavor of transcension and the attainment of the ultimation were predestined for humankind by divine will. However, these events may not come to fruition if human beings do not fulfill the scope they have been afforded, so the Astronist system was created to ensure that this potentialization process is achieved. The fourth component of Astronist theology states that, therefore, the fulfillment of scope corresponds to the fulfillment of divine will, if such scope leads to or supports the transcension. Humanity's achievement of transcension is regarded as the confluence of divine will, the place or condition to which all divine will leads to, whether in relation to humanity or another species that has undergone a scope. The fifth component of Astronist theology states that because the experience of transcension is intertwined with expansion into the astronomical world, outer space is regarded as the portal through which humankind may connect with or otherwise become closer to divinity. Number six component of Astronist theology states that because the divine is regarded to afford scope, a key ingredient to astrosis, through its interveniences in the cosmos, communication with the divine through prayer is essential to maintaining that close bond between the individual and divinity. The seventh component of the Astronist theology states that there are a number of means of communication with the divine through the astronomical world in the name of the personal endeavor of astrosis, as well as the collective endeavor of transcension. The divine established the intendance or the economy of transcension to manage the transcensions of different species. Just 1 second, sorry. One such means is the eighth component of Astronist theology states that one such means is presented via exotheism, whose central belief is that upon discovering extraterrestrial life, the impartation of theological and philosophical truths to humanity will expedite the endeavor of transcension. Number 9 component of Astronist theology states that alternatively, in prismatics, the astran force or astronic energy is regarded to pervade the cosmos and is the means by which the divine intervenes in cosmic existence, and therefore is a means for humans to connect with the divine. The 10th component of Astronist theology states that receptions from the divine on the nature of transcension and the ultimation assist in humanity's endeavor to reach its highest possible condition. The 11th component of Astronist theology states that in the dipadotheistic and panentheistic view of Astronism, anthropomorphism of the divine is opposed. The divine does not feel, nor does the divine judge morality. The divine is separate too, yet is able to interpenetrate any of the cosmoses in the universe. And then the 12th and final component of the Astronist theology is that essentially the confirmants for realizing the ultimation including primarily scope, astronality, and stellancy, have been bestowed to humankind by the divine, but whether humanity harnesses those confinements is left up to us, with there existing a variety of consequences if we do or if we do not. So I hope now that you sort of had a better understanding of Astronist theology, the sort of role of God in Astronism, and also, of course, from the first part of this conversation with Cometan episode, hopefully you'll have a better understanding of the Astronist Cosmology. And I will now leave you guys to sort of ponder on these questions, and I will see you in the next episode of a conversation with Cometan. So thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next episode. Bye.